And we are live. Come one, come all. Nothing but love, nothing but respect. You know what we do, what we don't, what we is, and what we is here today. In probably the longest it has ever gone for me between reading One Piece chapters. This chapter, I think, dropped, would have been on Thursday. Oh, hello, eggs. I haven't read the chapter yet. Giving you a heads up. That's alright, that's alright. I've been in the dark. I've been away all week. And do you know what? Just for the sake of everyone in the audience as well, I'll unmute you now so you can still talk. Hello?
Hello.
All
Do
right.
you know anything about the chapter?
No, not yet.
Oh, you're in for a fun time.
That tends to be the point. I've been stuck working away all week, and Friday night, instead of doing the chapter reaction, I had a friend's birthday, so I went caught up with them. Saturday was a complete write-off because I felt crook as anything, so I was like, do you know what? I'll just make the reaction and the discussion all in one video tonight. So, without further ado, gonna get straight into it. I'm sure you are just gonna be sitting there giddy, ready to give your 2 cents at a moment's notice. To anyone
Are we going to be reacting as you read live, or are you going to read and then we react?
Oh, you can stay how you are now. I will read the chapter now, so I'll do my reaction now while we're going through. But I'll leave you unmuted so you can say whatever you want as we're going through if you want. All right.
Okay, cool.
All right, perfect. That being said as well, if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon for the more notifications of content like this. We're trying to hit 200 subscribers at the moment. We're sitting a little over 160 at the moment, so we're doing well considering it was only 12 months ago that we hadn't even hit 70. But yeah. Alright, let's get into it. So, chapter 1085, The Death of Nefertari Cobra, which has me excited because that probably means we're picking up where we left off last chapter, which is fucking nutty, considering it ended with Imu walking in and saying the whole Lily spiel. I'm excited. We have a cover request here. By Mount Apple, Frankie encouraging hatchling turtles on their way to the sea. Kind of beautiful, kind of sad. He's beating up a crab. But I've got a feeling that that's going to be the least of this chapter, so let's just get through. Let's fuck the cover page off and get into it, shall we? The Impossible Ruler. No one is ever supposed to sit there, and Cobra's looking up in just disbelief. No individual should have the power to control the world. Mu shall... Okay, is that Mu talking, or is that the Gorosei? Mu shall address two of the points being discussed, and thou must answer a single question in return, Cobra. Who are you?
Imu calls himself Mu. He refers to himself in the third person.
Right. I mean, look. Everyone needs a quirk in One Piece.
Exactly. I like that quirk, to be honest.
Okay, so that's what's written up along the side as well. Sweet. Alright. It could be a coincidence, but I recognize the name Imu from the hit. Okay! Okay, so it's one of the 20 already, which obviously wouldn't be one of the Nefertari. That changes shit. But I recognize the name Imu from the history of the first 20. Such curiosity teeters on impertinence. It will not be dignified with an answer.
How cool is his way of speaking, by the way?
Wait.
I really love Imu as a character, seriously.
Wait a second here. There's supposed to be 20 swords, right?
Yeah.
One for each kingdom.
Yeah.
If he's one of the 20, one of these weapons is his, because the only person that didn't put a weapon down was...
Lily.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, wouldn't that then imply that either Lily did pledge a sword, and Imu didn't, because we've seen it tallied up multiple times that there's only 19, or... does that mean Imu did pledge not to sit on the throne and then usurped it? Alright, I'm gonna keep going through here. However, those initial queries shall be addressed. D is the moniker of our ancient enemy. In recent times, it has cropped up more frequently, however. It is nothing but a faint echo. Those who carry the name do not even know of its true meaning now. And yet, this irritation only endures due to Queen Lily's grave blunder 800 years ago. Blunder. The same can be said of those irksome scholars investigating the so-called Void Century. Without... Wait, hang on a second. Without that blunder, there would be no pirates chasing the poneglyphs in pursuit of treasure. If it were not for Lily's incompetence, those vexing relics would never have been scattered all over the world. So, they had the poneglyphs?
So, yes, they had collected all of the poneglyphs, and Lily somehow managed to get them all spread around the world.
That is interesting.
And somehow they've never been able to get retrieved again.
Or they just gave up on doing it.
Yeah. True.
Without that blunder, there would be no pirates chasing poneglyphs in pursuit of the treasure. If it were not for Lily's incompetence, this vexing relics would have been scattered all over the... Those vexing relics would never have been scattered all over the world. The release of the poneglyph was the worst possible outcome for us. So, one must wonder whether it was truly a mistake, or if it was actually part of some larger plan. Yo, they pull out fucking Glocks! Yo, all the Goris are just straight up just pulling out a Glock. Just like, nah.
Except for the sword, man.
Nah, he's got his Glock, man. It's just a bit pointier. Yo, that right there is just proof enough that he's a swordsman. Everyone else can go fuck off.
Yeah.
The truth
It is interesting that like everyone else is just straight up default to a gun, which is what like all of the beta bitch celestial dragons do. They just pull out a pistol and shoot whoever they dislike. So that to me is like a bit, oh, they're not strong, you know, like the fact that they just pull out a pistol.
I mean, it's Cobra. I mean, they had Shanks in the room and were like pretty confident that they could handle Shanks, and we've talked in like excess about that in the past. So it's like until we see something of them, it's gonna be just like okay, whatever. Pulling out a Glock, I don't necessarily see it as being like he's weak, because I mean like Doflamingo pulled out a Glock on Law. Definitely didn't need a Glock to fight though. You know what I mean?
Yeah, true.
The truth undoubtedly lies in the letter that Lily left. So pray tell. Yo, fuck me, sorry. The way...
I love the way that he talks.
The first time getting Imu talking, I actually kind of feel nervous, and it's like so... in the impertinence of all things.
He's so like dignified.
So pray tell, was it deliberate? Was it a deliberate choice only to refer to her as Queen Lily of House Nefertari? Go ahead and divulge the full name on her letter as written. They've got me. I suppose there really is no chance I'm leaving this room alive. Yo! He knows! Ugh! I take it that there is no fib I could tell that would satisfy you enough to let me go. Your fate was decided the moment you saw the great Imu. Not surprising, they can't let anyone know the world's greatest taboo has been broken. No, we've got Sabo here. The atmosphere... Oh, okay, so this is where Sabo's watching it. Oh, okay. So I take it that Imu's gonna... not Imu, that, what's his name? Cobra's gonna die in here, because you know how I was saying a couple weeks back, he died on a checkered floor? Mm-hmm. Look at that. As a zoomed up shot on checkered floors. Yep. The atmosphere here feels a little sinister. What's going on? The truth is, the letter from Alabaster's ruler 8 centuries ago was signed by what? Queen Nefertari D. Lily.
So the question is basically, was she like first D, or were there Ds during the Void Century, and she just sort of like changed her name to D, or was she a D the whole time? Like, that's the question. Is like, was the ancient enemy? Was that like before the like during the Void Century that they were fighting against people with the D name, or was
Well,
Lily the first D and she's like the
mm,
representative of?
no, based on the conversation already, it's implied that she would have adopted the name because Imu already said his enemy were the D, and so then he's asked, "What did she pen her name on that letter?" So that would imply that she's adopted the moniker, wouldn't it?
Yeah, true.
Or she hid the moniker from Im, but that doesn't make sense because she's like, even if she betrayed them, being one of the 20 kingdoms to take down the world guard, like the original ancient kingdom, they wouldn't really ally with a D if the D are the ancient kingdom in the first place, would they?
Yeah, yeah. I like it's possible, but I don't think it would be the case that she was like double agent the entire time, and she's literally stayed a double agent until they won the whole war, and then she betrayed. But I don't think that's likely.
In my theory, which I went into detail about the week you couldn't hop in the stream, I talked about how I'll go over it later. Actually, I'll finish the chapter. So okay, so he says D. What the fuck is this devil's tail thing? So it's like something comes off from Cobra's right, whips around, stabs him through like an arrow. And I'm guessing that's Sabo leaping behind him in fire. The Gorosei see him. Fire Fist. Smothered Mate. Ooh! Wait, Sabo's naming shit after chess moves? Yo, hang on. The move in chess and shogi where a king is checked by a knight while surrounded by its own pieces. Yo, fucking oath. Oh! What the fuck?
I think, to be honest, I think Smothered Mate might not be a common move that he uses because, like, it makes a lot of sense. Like, you check the king when they're surrounded by their own pieces, and he's attacking Imu with it while he's surrounded by all the Gorosei. Yeah, so I think it's just like a nod to that,
dude,
possibly.
Shape-shifting, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Looks like a dragon, like the Punk has a dragon, a western dragon. Mouth. Oh, fuck! Wait! Yo, so wait, Sabo does a smothered mate attack, like a flame fist that's going up after Im. Im transforms, eats it. His eye goes warped as fuck. And then we cut to these silhouettes, which are the Gorosei transforming, I'm guessing.
Yep. Or him doing something to transform the Gorosei.
No. I can see in the background, there's like, they've got the awakening cloaks around them.
Yeah, you think? Because Im right now has never been seen not as a shadow. Now suddenly all of the Gorosei are shadows.
I just say in that regard, it's just them trying to hide the aesthetic. I mean, like, Green Bull was in broad...
They're still trying to hide...
Green Bull was in broad daylight, and they didn't show the aesthetic of Green Bull.
I think at this point, Im literally just looks like that. Because the arrow that he shot out is just like a pure...
Okay, no.
And then suddenly these guys are completely shadowed.
No. Let me clarify something here. I think the Gorosei are in silhouette. Right?
Yeah.
Do you know what Im fucking looks like there? An Umi Bozu.
I have no idea what that is.
When Im was first introduced, there was a theory going around that he may have like an Umi Bozu ability, right? So look it up. It's literally Im spelt backwards. Imu spelt backwards, right? Umi Bozu. And they're yokai that control the seas with shape-shifting abilities.
Yeah, right.
And so the theory was at the time, because like Im was all silhouette, it was going around for a little bit that people were being like, oh, he's going to be an Umi Bozu because king of the world. In the One Piece world, the world is mostly ocean. He's going to be like the king of the sea, being an Umibozu that could shapeshift and shit like that. Which, this looks fucking identical to an Umibozu. The Gorosei, though, that looks like a bull, a human, or a humanoid, a bird, and a rhino. And then in that other shot over on the left, it looks like they've got the other dude there that we haven't seen yet. Because that's like a rhino horn, that's like a bird there, and I'm assuming all these guys are going to be awakened. So these may be like mythical variations of all these fruits.
I just looked it up, and you know a goofy myth about the Umibozu.
Yeah.
They attempt to sink ships by demanding a barrel from the crew and then proceeding to scoop water into the boat with it.
I knew because ages ago, because being shapeshifters, do you know what they present themselves as most commonly?
A humanoid?
A blind human.
Right.
So people were having the theory for ages that like maybe Fujitora is not as nice as he seems.
Yeah, right.
But at this point in time, I think it's separate to that. But like, can you see an image of an Umibozu?
Yeah, I definitely think Umibozu is the strongest thing right now. Strongest possibility.
I mean, it's like people were saying it as well because it's like Imu backwards is Umi. You know what I mean? So it's like, anyone watching this, I'm not taking credit for this theory. This theory fucking existed well and truly before me. I saw it floating around ages ago. I just remember the theory from ages ago when Im was introduced back at 900 because it was like, I'd never actually heard of an Umibozu back then. Right, so this is where they get the photo then. I was hoping I'll be able to take you all out in one move. Oh, wait, I didn't even realize he flashed all the Gorosei with fire. And they fucking tanked it.
Yeah.
I was hoping I'd be able to take you all out in one move. After all, there was no way I could have known what the hell was located here at the very top of the world. And then that photo gets taken, which is where they are probably blaming him for Cobra. You are Luffy-kun's brother, aren't you? You're with the Revolutionary Army, and you still stepped in to save me? Our cause is more concerned with the monsters that sit above the kings and queens of the world. Do you know Luffy somehow? He once stepped in to save me too. That sounds like him alright. Yeah, I'm looking at these silhouettes here, and assuming they're in the same order that they were sitting in before, that would be... The bull is Saturn. The ambiguous blob is the Gorosei that looks like a Vinsmoke. The humanoid one looks like Gandhi. The one with the big mustache looks like the bird, and then the rhino looks like the dude with the big head. But... hang on, I better keep reading, because if they're showing the fruits here, they may keep showing it. Leave me, I'm dead weight. You have a better chance of escaping on your own. Not gonna happen. There's something I've come to understand. And if you die here, we'll be in trouble too, because I need you to deliver a message to Luffy-kun and Vivi. You want me to tell them something? Tell them we share the moniker D. What? I finally know the path Arabasta must follow. So you both have D in your... Oh, fuck, we're getting a Sabo flashback in a flashback. Right. Flashception. So you both have a D in your name? Is that just a coincidence or something? I guess. Who cares? A name's a name. Do you want a D in your name, Sabo? What? You can be Sad Boy. Oh. Why'd you put it there? Oh, that's funny. Yo, wait.
So, Sad Boy, Joy Boy?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's only one person that's going to bring happiness to the world, and Sabo's a little bit too Oliver Twisty. Please, sir, can I have some more? Fuck, this tail thing whips around again as well. So the tail comes whipping around, stabs through Cobra off Sabo's... Oh, no, it stabs Sabo. Shit! Yo, that like almost took him out.
Yeah.
King Cobra. The poneglyphs. Must be protected? Fly the flag that heralds the world's eventual dawn. Nefertari D. Lily. Oh, so that's the end of her letter, is it? The poneglyphs must be protected. Fly the flag that heralds the world's eventual dawn. Nefertari D. Lily. I'm counting on you, Sabo-kun. And Sabo's fucking on death's door.
So, fly the flag is the eventual dawn. Kind of had like a couple of thoughts about this. Is it could always just be the whole Joy Boy thing, right? Whole prophecy or whatever.
We've talked about this in the past, haven't we? Like all the all the kingdoms that seem to be associated with the ancient kingdom have a sun on their flag, like a circle with 8 satellites around it. Surely that's just like a representation of the sun, and meaning fly the flag that heralds the world's eventual dawn is just flying the flag of joy.
It could literally just basically mean like be a pirate. Essentially, like be a pirate. But other thing is, and this is like less likely, and obviously we haven't really had that much hints to it, but I thought my brain went to Pluton, an ancient weapon and a ship, and maybe it has a flag on it, which is like the Joy Boy flag, or the flag of the ancient kingdom. And she's basically saying like, get Pluton and take over the world government and get everyone free before she died.
Yeah, right.
Because it's pretty heavily hinted that Alabasta may have the ancient weapons.
Well, they had. Well, they thought they thought they had Pluton, but no, they had the poneglyph that pointed to where the Pluton was, which is Wano.
Oh.
Hang on, King Cobra, you must live on. Who's there? Oh, Wapple was watching. He's dead. Cobra the Senile has gone and got himself killed. I never liked him, but how can I celebrate after witnessing something so terrifying? I've stumbled upon the biggest skeleton in the world government's closet. I don't even know who that was. They will end me. In the grand round table in the council chamber, it seems that King Cobra and King Wapple are not yet present. We just received word that the two of them will not be attending and that we are going to proceed without them. Yo, they're going to be trying to murk Wapple.
Yep.
Fuck. Perhaps King Cobra's impassioned speech drained him. Maybe he considered his job done now that the dissolution of the warlords has been approved. Let us move to the remaining matters of the agenda. Yo, and you got Riku and Neptune just like focused on being like sus as fuck about this. Now then, concerning the coalition of the 4 northern nations calling for independence. I wonder if that's one of the 12 kingdoms that rebelled. Or like 4 of the 12 kingdoms that rebelled. Shirahoshi, the conference is almost over. Let's go wait at the Red Port. We don't have to deal with the Celestial Dragon dunces there. You okay? I was hoping to say goodbye to Princess Vivi. I wonder where she went. Fucking Lucci, of course. What's the big idea? You'd better untie me. Whose orders are you following? A guest room in Pangaea Castle. I'll tell the whole world about this. Okay, so she's been captured by CP0, has she? Hey, easy there. You're being too forward. Gotta play your cards closer to the vest if you want a shot at being free, you know? You're one feisty chick. I'm afraid no one's going to help you, princess. Once your disappearance is made known, you'll probably live the rest of your life like a pet. Why the fuck does Jabra's name look like it's meant to be sort of Mexican aesthetic when his aesthetic is Chinese? That look, because I know the like the people that do the manga when they translate it from Japanese to English have to change a lot of stuff, That looks clearly like they've just misinterpreted what his aesthetic is meant to be from. Like Koopa Chabra. Like, you know what I mean? Going around that aesthetic instead of, like, him being, like, a Chinese martial artist. I'm afraid no one's going to help you, Princess. Once your disappearance is made known, you'll probably live the rest of your life as a pet. Is Shirahoshi alright? Seriously. Now's not the time to be worried about others, little Missy. We received word that more trouble broke out around her earlier, but she apparently came out of the ordeal unscathed. Thank goodness. The punks who ended up assaulting the celestial dragons that was trying to kidnap the mermaid princess were members of the Straw Hat Grand Fleet. Boldly proclaimed their victory, giving their names and everything. The guests in the country yard were sunk. Yo, Sai and Leo are gonna get fucking brutally big bounties from that. Like, Luffy punched a celestial dragon, got a bare minimum 100,000. They almost murdered one.
It's really interesting that, like, we're hearing all of this stuff, right? This is before Luffy took out Kaido, and he's getting clout already. You know what I mean? Like, this is
dude.
Straw Hat Grand
Leo,
Fleet. Look, they did that, and then they started yelling into everyone, "Yay, we're a part of the Straw Hat Grand Fleet, and we just beat up a."
Dude, do you know what that actually has to look like? Because that's Charlos again. That has to look like Luffy's trying to assassinate the Charlos family. Like, the poor dude can't get a break, even in his own home when he's trying to kidnap someone, getting murked.
Literally sounds like he hit Charlos the first time, and then they summoned admirals to deal with Luffy. Luffy escaped and survived, and now he's, like, got a vendetta against Charlos, and he's sending his crew members to go and, like, mess with the family. Yeah, assassinate the Charlos family line.
Do you know what? Sai's bounty was 210. Leo didn't have a bounty, right? At bare minimum, you got to give him 100 mil increase. If not, ridiculously more. Like, they outright tried to assassinate a celestial dragon. If anything warrants a bounty, that's it, right? Sai may come out of this having the highest bounty in the Grand Fleet. Because, like, what? Cavendish is at 330 at the moment? Cavendish is at 330 and Barto's only at 200 or 250. So, like,
to be fair, they all could have already changed and we just don't know yet.
True, but I would say even if they got, like, slightly higher bounties, it'd probably be more based on this feat, wouldn't it? Because you had at the Reverie, like, 3 days before this, remember, back at, like, in the 900s, they had that report will go out about all the new captains that are under Straw Hat Luffy when Luffy got the 1.5 bill bounty. And immediately after joining that, assassinating a celestial dragon, like, this may be an incident where it gave everyone a boost in the Grand Fleet. Not just them, but they would probably have the higher boost for being the ones that actually commit the crimes. You know what I mean? Boldly proclaimed the victory, gaining their names and everything. And guests in the courtyard were stunned. Meanwhile, at the top of the home of the gods, Fujitori's actions helped the revolutionary army free the slaves. And that seriously pissed off Ryokyugu, so they went at it.
Yeah.
Wait! No!
That is where the scars came from.
Fuji got bandaged up by Green Bull?
Fuji lost to Green Bull.
And that does wonders, but it does terrible things, because first things first, I'm assuming Fuji didn't try to land a hit on him at all, right? But in current time, last time we saw Fuji, which is around the same time we saw Green Bull's introduction, right? Fuji was still bandaged up and Green Bull's clean as fuck.
Well, that's the thing though, is that Green Bull is like clean, right? Because he's got the healing ability. So it could have literally been that Fuji was like annihilating him over and over again, but Green Bull just kept coming back.
I don't know if the healing ability necessarily works in that regard, as opposed to stopping him dying. per se. It depends on how his plant Logia works.
What didn't he literally say? As long as there is a tiny sapling of me remaining, I can always come back from it.
Yeah, but coming back doesn't mean coming back unscathed. It just means not dying, if that makes sense. Like, for example, right? So, like, if Fujitora hakied up his sword and cut his cheek, right? Is his cheek now always cut?
Well, I don't think so, because I mean, like, you can haki up and cut his arm off, and he's back, right?
But
like, the people on Wano that were fighting Green Bull had haki.
But they were fighting him where he was making a bigger golem of himself, bigger than him, that actually exists. You know what I mean? Like, it's in a weird grey area. Like, does it work where no matter what damage you do to him, he can heal it back because he's a plant, so he just heals like a plant? Or is it if you hit, like, because you know how haki forces the tangibility of a Logia, right?
Yeah.
If you cut him with haki, if he's down in his human size when you cut him, it hurts him. Whereas, like, you know how you know how Sabo did the Fire Fist earlier and it sent up, right?
Yeah.
If they cut that Fire Fist, that doesn't hurt Sabo, does it?
Yeah, true.
Right? The Green Bull Big Ent form is like that. In that form, it's more like Picker than it is Green Bull, if that makes sense. Arguably.
I could see that, but I think, like, then when he's fighting Fuji, he would have the same thing, right? He would be in his big golem form.
Well, I don't know, because he specifically, we saw before this, he wasn't able to use his golem form because he was in his golem form, and the Celestial Dragons were like, fucking stop it.
Well, he was in his golem form fighting, what's his name, wasn't he?
Yeah, but that was the point. Like, the Celestial Dragons were telling him to stop it. Hence why he was nerfed. Because they were saying
they were just telling him to, like, stop being so big, because, like, I think the whole thing there was, like, he was just fighting too recklessly, and he was like, if he moves wrongly, he can take down a building.
Yeah, but that's the point. So they were telling him to get out of that form because he was collateral damage too much because it's too big. And you see him here against Fuji, and he's down in his human form, just making a green tendril, like a plant tendril.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know. Like, we've never seen him fight not in that form. I don't know why he would fight Fuji.
Well, we saw him fight not in that form when he beat King and Queen.
The other thing is that, like, if he fights Fuji in that a weaker form and still beats Fuji, that's, like, even more ridiculous.
I don't think he beat Fuji.
Well, did more damage than he took.
Yes.
A better outcome.
But how does Fuji still have a fucking job?
That's the thing, is, like, I think what it is that, like, he can. By the way, like, I'm pretty sure Fuji was doing that intentionally to try to help the revs.
Well, I don't think it was to help the revs, as opposed to he doesn't like slavery.
Well, yeah, that's what I mean. He was helping the revs get rid of the free the slaves.
Yeah.
Like, the way that I see it is, like, yeah, he's basically, like, immune unless you can, like, eradicate all of the of the little green bits. And to be fair, Fuji's not going to kill another admiral, right?
Yeah.
So Fuji could have literally, like, evaporated the golem form, and then he could just come back out from another seedling nearby full health. And even if Fuji was strong enough to eradicate him and then eradicate all of the little seedlings at once, he wouldn't do it because he's not going to kill another admiral.
Well, I mean, we already saw...
So like at the end of that fight, no matter what, it's going to end up with Fuji being injured and Green Bull being clean.
But the thing is, like, I don't think Fuji wanted to hurt Green Bull in any capacity. And on top of that, like, I mean...
Green Bull just wanted to whip him a little bit.
I think Green Bull was just taking out his frustration because, honestly, Fuji's a fucking... the shittest admiral from the perspective of the world government. Like, he's the worst at his job. It's like, dude, you've been on shift for like 2 hours now. You've already made us look bad 10 times and let a bunch of slaves go free. What the fuck? Yeah. But I would say, like, in terms of Green Bull, because you see him here, Green Bull's scuffed up, right? So he's scuffed up in the panel where he's with Fujitora. It's just he doesn't have any long-term damage. But that scuffing could have been from the Revs, not Fuji. Or it could be from him and Fuji, say they've been clashing back and forth here off screen a little. But it's funny because obviously we saw none of the Revs land a hit on Fuji, meaning Fuji's face is all bandaged up because of Green Bull. Meanwhile, Green Bull's walking around clean as fuck. Yeah, far out. What's the deal with this year's Reverie?
And by the way, that also means that although the Admirals kind of failed to stop the Revs, not only was it said that they were held back, but it's also confirmed now that none of them really actually took any damage.
And they were infighting against each other.
Yeah.
Literally anything in its possible narrative sense to make the Admirals look bad was happening in that moment. Yeah.
It's all been reversed now.
Except for Sabo, who Sabo went up against someone even stronger and got one shot apparently.
Although to be fair, he was trying to protect.
Yeah, but well, no, he wasn't.
And again, it wouldn't really surprise me if he gets one shot by IMU. I mean, IMU is end of series, you know.
Was that IMU that even did that?
I thought the knife thing was always IMU, yeah, because the whole thing earlier when he first used it was he heard D. His eyes went angry, and then
let me
shot out.
Let me finish the chapter first, and then we'll go back and look at that. What's the deal with this year's Reverie? Like a peck? Give me a break. Looks like I'm gonna have to do something about this. Okay, is fucking Wapple gonna save Vivi, and that's how they end up getting to Morgan? Spare me, I didn't see a thing, huh? Wapple? Out of the way, this is my chance. Move already. You'll never take me alive. Huh? Chapapapa. What was that? I think it was King Wapple. Hey, wait a sec. Vivi's gone, huh? Oh, darling, I've been looking for you. Where the devil have you been? And who is that young lady with you? Hey, Wapple, how much further are you going to go? As far as it takes, I'll run to the ends of the world if I have to. Sounds good to me, let's go. Don't tell me you're running away with a mistress. Yo, that's actually funny. I like how they're bringing Wapple back into it in almost the same frame that they brought Buggy back into it. Because I'm not going to lie, Wapple has been an outlier for someone that I do not give a flying care about in this series at all.
We're just missing your boy, Slow Beam, Foxy. Need Foxy to come back.
He will come back on... Nah, he will come back in Cross Guild.
Better.
The funniest thing is, Wapple's wife is supposed to be Miss Universe in One Piece. So she's straight up a model that lowered to him because he had so much money. So from her perspective, he's running away with a younger girl. Ushka. Okay, let's go back to the beginning. I want to fucking look over this IMU shit again, alright? Let's have a look at this Spike Tail. So, they pull the Glocks. I mean, yeah, you could say it comes from IMU, but it also doesn't look like it comes from IMU because it comes nowhere near from where IMU was. It comes from...
Just that weird.
No, but it comes from where one of the Gorosei is.
No. It shows Mu getting angry. His eyes...
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that.
And it shoots out of nowhere. Also, it's a shadow thing. At that point, they all weren't shadows. The Gorosei weren't shadows, and Imo is.
Well, yes and no. Because in that one page, so you see him talking about it, right? Where is it from that perspective? Okay, no. You could be more right than I am there. Because it comes from his left-hand side. His hard left, right? Which is where Saturn was. So maybe Imu can just control stuff in the room.
This is Imo's ability. There's no way he's not awakened, right? You can make that thing come from literally anywhere.
I don't know, because I think, based on what I'm seeing here, I think that actually could be Saturn's ability. Because hear me out, right? Because it definitely looks more like Imu's ability, yeah? Especially since it's like focusing on Imu's reaction. But if you follow through from it, right? Cobra's facing them. On Cobra's far left is Saturn, right? You see Cobra talking about it. This spike comes out of nowhere, impales him through. Sabo jumps up and does a fire blast. We see in the fire blast all the Gorosei there. Obviously, they still look humanoid there, right? But Saturn and the other one on the far right side already look a little different to how they normally look in silhouette form, right? And like I'm not saying they look like they're full silhouette animals here, because if I'm looking at the animals, like I said, like Saturn looks like a bull of some kind or an ox. You know what I mean? But if you keep looking from that side, oh wait, I've already fucked that up. Wait, Imu's facing him. Sorry, not Imu. Cobra's facing him, and it's on Cobra's left. Yeah. So that's Saturn. Saturn's the one that looks like a bull, right? Sabo starts running away with him, and then you see the anthropomorphized blob from the one that looks like it's next to Saturn, the blonde Gorosei member. Not Im. Because Imu's still crawling down from the roof. While we focus on the blob that's like immediately behind Sabo and Cobra, which would be not Imu, which would be Saturn and the blonde-looking Gorosei. And then, like,
I get what you mean. Like, it's definitely possible.
And then, because if you keep following it down, you like it looks like he's hooked him with his tail almost. Sabo gets hurt from the tail, so it looks like it was more the Gorosei. Like, even though it looks very confusing, because it looks like it's more the Gorosei. Then they go to open their mouth, like roaring, and then it looks like we get Cobra taking a stand against the Rhino one, while the others turn around to see Wapple, if that makes sense.
Yeah, okay.
Because Imu's still above them when all that's happening, separate to them.
Yeah, but my expectation was if he's awakened, he can summon it from anywhere, right? So it doesn't really matter the direction.
Ooh.
But to be fair, like it would be interesting. Like, so to me, what I think is sort of happening, based on what you've said, is like I think like Oda kind of wants us to think that it was Imu because it's like his reaction is shown right before it. But I agree that it's definitely possible that it's like, well, it's definitely likely that it's like one of the Gorosei. Obviously, Oda's just trying to throw like a bit of a misdemeanor, and then later it'll sort of be revealed that that's, let's say it's Saturn. Not very long, it'll be revealed that that's Saturn's ability, and everyone will go, "Oh, that was."
See. The weird thing is, I think it's actually all of their ability, in a weird way. Because like,
they all have the same ability.
Hear me out for this, because I think this might sound a little weird, but I like it. So I think Im is an Umibozu and is a shapeshifter, right? Being a shapeshifter in the world of One Piece essentially grants you any ability you want already, doesn't it?
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
Is, just before going through this, do you reckon Im's more or less likely to actually be a Devil Fruit user, though?
That was my big question.
Because...
Is this some weird species and this is like his innate ability, or is he just using a Devil Fruit?
Yeah, because the reason I ask that is we've got things like the things in the Florian Triangle.
Yeah.
Which, like, in the past were meant to look like Umibozu, which would be these things here. You know what I mean? And we know other mythical zones in the past weren't mythical. They existed. They just died out over time. Like how in actual One Piece lore, there used to be literal living dragons. You know what I mean? So, what I'm actually looking at here and thinking at here is something that might be a lot more complicated. So, hang on a second. Can I pull up the Road to Laugh Tale stuff? You know the Road to Laugh Tale? You know how we had all the Devil Fruits revealed in that? Do you know what I'm actually thinking looking at all these? I'm thinking. Do you reckon? I think it was Road to Laugh Tale Part 3 with all the devil fruits? Yes, it was. Alright, I'll pull it up on stream now. So if we go to the zones, right? There's the dog fruits. The bovine fruits. So there's canine fruits, bovine fruits, horse, turtle, urodila, elephant, egg, birds, cats, humans, and snake fruits, and bug fruits, right? I know I said a lot more than I really was expecting. But I think each type of fruit has a mythical variant.
Yeah, wouldn't surprise me.
And they may have more than one mythical variant, because we've got like Sun God Nika and the Buddha fruit, both being human fruits, right? Yeah. What I think we're looking at here is a mythical bison fruit, another mythical bird fruit, and maybe a mythical rhino fruit or something like that. So I'm seeing like a bull, rhino, and a bird. And then I think IMU and the Gorosei member are both going to be mythical human fruit users. Right?
Both who, sorry?
IMU and the Gandhi Gorosei, the sword Gorosei. Both human fruit users. Because if you have a look at the silhouette here where Sabo... Like, so you know the page where Sabo's standing over Cobra?
Yeah.
And you got all the silhouettes? The two in the middle both have the awakened cloak around them, right?
I think I'm on the wrong one. Where the fire is going on?
No. The one under the fire. So on the right, when Im's coming down in that blob form.
Where the fuck is that? You see Sabo talking and Sabo's in the middle of the frame?
Yeah. It was like, I was hoping I'd be able to take...
coming down in a blob form? Where is that? I missed that.
On the top of the page.
Im at the top.
Yeah.
Oh, that is Im at the top. I thought that was just like one of the... I thought that was just like one of the other Gorosei.
No. That's why I was saying it was one of the Gorosei that attacked with the spike. Because Im's still up there, and that spike comes from off-screen, but the off-screen part where it comes from is where the Gorosei are, not Im. So it seems like...
Yeah, I knew that Im was up there. It's just that, like, I feel like Im could literally have it come out of anywhere.
Yeah, so what?
Okay, that makes sense. So Im's up there.
So the Im's up there, which is why I thought it was one of the Gorosei, because Im's crawling down to get closer. Oh. Right? But if you look at the Gorosei in that silhouette there, the two in the middle both have the Neo Clouds for an awakened zone. Right? If you look where the bull is, right? And Sabo's shoulder, you see another very slight little bit of a Neo Cloud there as well. For Saturn.
Yeah, I see that one. I don't see the two in the middle's one.
Well, do you see the head for the Gorosei?
Okay, you're saying that thing is the...
So you see its head, and you see the thing wrapping around its head? That looks like the awakening cloak. And then if you can't...
Here's what I see on that guy, is I see the thing that's coming out of his back is a sword. And then there's a hand grabbing onto that sword, and that's what's going behind his head and into where his shoulder is. So I think his arm is like some weird, like ethereal goo.
Look at the...
He's unsheathing a sword from his back.
Look at the panel to the left of it, though, where you see the silhouettes again, and you see the cloak again.
Yeah, okay.
So to me, and like you see it more clearly on the bird one as well. You see the cloak as well. Right? And then if you go down to where they see Wapple, you can see the clear cloud line as well. Separate again. If that makes sense. So I think what was that?
Yeah, I see.
Yeah, so I think it's showing that all of the Gorosei are meant to be awakened.
Okay.
So they're all probably mythical awakened zones. right?
The thing that I'm like that's wiggled me is they all look like almost like traditional Japanese demon
Yokai.
things.
Yeah.
Yokai, exactly. And the Imu is pretty solidly looking like a yokai.
Yeah.
So it and you know how it was always like we are the gods, and then people with the D are like the demons and like the enemies of the gods.
They probably just flipped the script.
Exactly. And then the other thing is that Sabo specifically says, because like we can't see them, but Sabo can, and he literally says, "I didn't know that hell was located here at the top of the world."
See,
like he's literally saying like this is hell. In these are demons.
That's why I think so, because like from Sabo's perspective, right? Like, I even put this up, actually. Thank fuck I was doing some conversation about this early this week. In the Discord, right?
Yeah.
Did you see the thing I posted about all the world government people that got to deal with at the moment?
No, what?
I did like a tally of it on like an Excel sheet, right? So I'll save it and I'll send it to you. All right. WG. We'll do all of that. And where do I want to save it? Let's save it there. I'll send it to you. That way it'll be easier. Anyway, the point I was getting at is Sabo's probably looking at this from the perspective, especially like, you know how him and like this is going in flashback, him talking to Dragon.
Mm-hmm.
He's probably sitting about this going like, dude, we're trying to deal with the Celestial Dragons, the Gods Knights, the Gorosei, and now this Imu figure. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, like, in terms of stuff at the moment to deal with, like him saying, "Oh, it's hell," it's like, honestly, this would actually be like the hardest thing to fight, because, and it's very fitting, like, because we just had the whole Big Mom and Kaido Onigashima raid where there was a bunch of yokai imagery being used. They're definitely invoking that again here, but I think what the difference will be here is it's actually going to be a bit of a play on it where it's a lot more of divinity, right? So, assuming Im is an Umibozu, right? That gives him the ability to, say, move in the water and shapeshift. In other words, he becomes Aku from Samurai Jack. You know what I mean? Do you ever see Samurai Jack?
I've seen
Clips? So he becomes like the main villain for Samurai Jack, who he can just shapeshift, which would mean, like, against Luffy, that'd be the perfect ability, just free-form shapeshifting, plus advanced Hakis.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it's like one dude can use his imagination to fight however he wants, and the other guy can mimic however he wants to fight by just changing his shape into whatever he wants. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's essentially like the zone version of a Logia.
Mm-hmm.
Which could be really
By the way,
yeah,
just a funky little thing. So you know how we still don't really know what the hell is going on with Kaido's race and why he's like so unique to other things? He was literally an Oni.
Yeah.
Which is a type of yokai. Which is supposedly like... So I got this thing up here. The Oni are the strongest, most violent, and dangerous yokai. Their appearance is similar to that of an ogre or demon. Their body is red, sometimes blue or green, and they have horns and fangs and carry an iron mace. One of the oldest supernatural beings, and its origin is related to Buddhism.
Mm-hmm.
So Kaido is possibly an estranged child of one of these people that we're seeing in this chapter. And that's where his sort of race comes from, and that's why he's like so random and unique.
Maybe. I see Kaido being an Oni, it just being a race that's died out. Honestly.
Yeah, possibly. A race from origin.
Much like
For example, in the Void Century, there was a giant war that divided the world in two. Which side of those two was were the Oni on?
I reckon the Oni were probably on the Ancient Kingdom side because Oni all the races themselves, arguably in the Water One Piece, all the special races, arguably could just be like scientific genetic manipulation from the Ancient Kingdom. They may not actually naturally exist at all.
But like the Ancient Kingdom was a kingdom, but they didn't hardcore own the world. There was these people as well that ended up winning.
Yeah, but that was because they banded together. So, okay, perfect time now. So you're away, so I didn't get to have this conversation with you, right? We did a huge breakdown of potential stuff for the Ancient Kingdom and the Void Century when it was like theorized that maybe Lily was in, right? Because that week was a little bit, you know what I mean? But the breakdown I gave was how worrisome and confusing it is at the moment, because in the world government's like situation, right? What kind of spurred my thinking about it is I was asked to make a theory on TikTok, like give any theories or thoughts I had on Lady Toki, right? So I went back and I was reading some of the stuff with her and also linking it with a bit of other stuff in that. And one of the big things that I found and also have talked about with you in the past and that, you know how I said if you look at the locations of the poneglyphs, and this chapter would even help solidify that more. All those places where poneglyphs are, we see being allies to the world, to the Ancient Kingdom, right? So, in Wano, we had, remember when Ryuma was being talked about when Zoro was fighting Gyukimaru? And they were talking about Wano's history and how it used to be called the City of Gold. Right? I raised the hypothesis that Wano's history is actually misinterpreted a lot with the Ancient Kingdom's history, and Wano being the country of gold was actually a false understanding because it was actually being conflated with Wano's other settlement, which wasn't in Wano but was inhabited by Wanoians that had the City of Gold, which is Shandora in the Sky Islands, right? Because we know that Shandora used to originally exist on the Blue Sea, down like on the normal sea level, right? In the Nolan Kulgara flashback, Kulgara actually is talking about how his people actually you know how the history of the Skypeans there is like, you know, they get sent up into the sky. The Skypeans see that they've got land and they try to colonize them and take their land because they need it for resources, right? Based on the Kulgara talking points in his own flashback, it's actually heavily implied that his race didn't originally own Shandora either. They actually inhabited it after the end of the Great War 800 years ago, 900 years ago. So, in that same arc, you have Robin actually going around through the city, and not on the poneglyphs. She actively talks about how there is poneglyph writing all around the city very casually, right? We know that writing is the writing of the Kozuki, meaning at some point in time there was Wano inhabitants, specifically Kozuki, that lived in Shandora to write those scripts, right? Mm-hmm. So we have a point in the Grand Line. Jaya and Shandora are next to Alabasta. Alabasta being like the Alabasta River that bisects Alabasta is called the Shandian River, which directly aims to that city, right? So I was talking about the fact that based on the knowledge that we have, right, we have thematical ties. For example, Nolan's also other biggest accomplishment was meeting the dwarves of the Tontatas. So you've got Nolan bridging the gap between Shandora, Dressrosa, and Wano, right? I theorize that Toki's family may have been, because her family were from Wano, but had never been to Wano in their life, right? And she was born 30 years before the ancient kingdom lost to the world government, right? She was born 30 years before the end of the Void Century. So her life and her lived experience would be that of the just before the end results of the war, right?
Yes.
She was trying to find Wano and had jumped forward in the future trying to find Wano. She was able to easily identify slavers, implying that slavery was very predominant during the Void Century and before. We also have the Tontaras that talked about how the Don Quixote family enslaved their entire race 900 years ago, right? And it wasn't until 800 years ago when the Riku family took over that they actually stopped being enslaved. So we know that the ancient kingdoms back in the day, their enemies, being the world government, used slavery heavily, right? And then we have this amassing amalgamation of wherever the ancient kingdom is in the New World, we pretty much know it's in the New World though, right?
Huh?
You have all these other islands radiating out from them where there's a bunch of technology and development, and then you have a straight line down one of the magnetic poses from the New World down under Fishman Island where there is other poneglyphs as well, and then continuing straight through down the Grand Line until you hit Shandora and then eventually Alabaster. So the Ancient Kingdom, most likely to an extent, were villains in some way, shape or form as well. Even though they had all this great and vast technology, they seemed to be almost on a war path in conquering kingdoms and expanding their empire. You know what I mean? Obviously, the world government now are like terrible people and bastards themselves, but they may have been originally the good guys. But if you have a look at the setup, I forget why I was bringing this up, but if you look at the original setup, you have the ancient kingdom in the New World expanding in a radius out from their country, and then picking one direction, which was straight down the Grand Line, where they just started colonizing everything. And we know that because they had heaps high advanced technology, they would have just been absolutely decimating country after country after country on the warpath, right? We know that Queen Lily stood against the ancient kingdom, and then at the end of beating them, decided not to join up with the rest of the other kings, hence her betrayal here, right? What that most likely is the ancient kingdom were probably bad guys, which caused these other 20 kingdoms, some good, some bad, to join forces together to overthrow them and try and eradicate them from existence. What probably ended up happening there, though, is Vivi's ancestor Lily probably went, they were bad guys, hence why I joined you and we defeated them. But now you guys are wanting to take the same place. You know what I mean? You're wanting to do the exact same thing, just instead of it happening to you, you're now doing it to other people. Hence her betrayal there, keeping the poneglyphs alive, because that means what she's trying to do is keep the record of history alive of you know the whole thing, if you don't know history, you're doomed to repeat it? The history probably is greed and ambition creates subjugation of other people's dreams, right? So say Joy Boy was the leader of this ancient kingdom of science and technology, right? What that probably means is, based on Joy Boy and his powers, it's the power of imagination, right? So his imagination, whether he was a scientific mind or not, he was surrounded by scientific minds. So it's one of those things where it's, you want your freedom so much that you will rob other people of their freedom for your own freedom. Very piratey, right? And so they're in pursuit of, it's like what's being raised at the moment with Vegapunk, where it's like, you know, your technology is wonderful for the world, but at the same point in time, you can make technology that we don't catch up with enough with ourselves, and then it gets used for bad things. Like, having the ability to transmit your knowledge to everyone on the planet all at once doesn't necessarily mean that you're a good guy for doing it. There's ways that can be weaponized. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's probably a lot like that, where all these other countries around the world were so vastly outnumbered and out-teched that they were genuinely afraid that this giant conglomerate was just going to terrorize them, that they banded together to defeat them, but then in turn, after defeating them, they just ended up usurping them and doing the same thing, whereas what Vivi's ancestors probably done there is just turned around and been like, if we don't remember history, we're doomed to repeat it. By making a void century and keeping the history from being acknowledged, all we're doing is we're perpetuating the same thing, but we're on top. So she left that as a safeguard to be able to keep those communications up. And that probably ends up tying in as well, thematically, with a lot of people's abilities that we don't know yet. For example, they talked in this chapter about Vivi betraying them, or Lily betraying them, and that's how the poneglyphs escaped, right? But we see that the poneglyphs are all around the world in really impossibly hard to find places and stuff like that. So what probably ended up happening there is you probably needed someone with like Kuma's ability to transport them. You know what I mean? So it seems like there's going to be a lot more complicated layers to this.
I got a question to speculate on.
Yeah.
Do you think that in the past there were more devil fruits and some of them have become lost? And so people had abilities that no one in this world actually really has? Or do you think that every devil fruit has sort of stuck around through this like inheritance thing?
I think it's a combination of both. I think all the devil fruits still exist, but some of them will definitely be in places that people are never going to be able to get to. For example, look at NL and the devil fruits in Skypiea. You know what I mean? It would have been highly likely that people never would have been able to get them, because I don't think devil fruits have something about them. Like they have a will about them, right? But they can't get up and walk on their own, if that makes sense.
So, but based on that, like based on the power of fate, like even if there was a devil fruit like in an underground bunker under Little Garden, no one's probably ever going to get. I would say the reason why it's there to begin with is because it's a wait for its rightful owner. Right? So like the fact that NL's fruit was up in Sky Island was because NL was the person that was supposed to have it.
There's a slight problem with that then, right? How much influence does the devil fruit have over the world? Because we know that this is a story of fate and destiny. The first chapter ends with saying this is Luffy's great journey of destiny, right? And we see it all the time with devil fruits lining up with people's personalities. You know what I mean? But it's like, does the devil fruit change the personality, or does the devil fruit suit because it's an artistical choice by an author? You know what I mean?
I think there's like this concept of fate sort of permeating the entire world, and it's almost as because fate is like a fickle thing, right? So it's almost as if someone were to get a fruit that it doesn't seem like he would be fated to actually have that fruit, he's still sort of fated to get it, because whatever happens is like what's supposed to happen. So like, for example, someone gets a fruit that just like really does not match them at all, and it's like really random that they got that fruit, but by getting that fruit they then like go over to some other random island and then die, and then someone who's actually is supposed to have that fruit then gets the fruit, like that kind of thing. So like even if it's not like I don't see why that fruit would be there, it still should be there, that kind of thing.
I could see that. Like it does exist. Like I say, it should be like that. No, it does exist in the story. Like definitively, that does happen. It's just how much of it is said, like, narrative versus like actual changing of fate. You know what I mean?
Well, because that's the thing, is like there is also still a possibility that there is things that can change fate, and then for example, let's say IMU is like immune to fate, or it depends on how wild the story gets at the end, right? But then like then maybe he has the ability to like permanently destroy a fruit if he comes across it, something like that, right? And like therefore like you could have, because for example like
sorry.
there's a fruit that lets you literally travel through time.
Oh, okay. Okay.
It's in one person.
Sorry, I remembered more of the theory now that I wanted to talk to you about. I'm gonna have to just send you the link and get you to watch it, man. For fuck's sake. So, because one of the other things was, you know, how I was talking about shared history, right? My theory ended up being that the Amatsuki family, Toki's family, were actually a branch family of the Kozuki left in charge of Shandora, right? And so Toki fled before Shandora got destroyed. The thing about that is Shandora is the city of gold. Wano used to be called the country of gold. You know what I mean? It's conflated different histories. But the big thing in Shandora, if we're talking about bastardizations of understanding of things going through time, like you know, like a kid's game of, like, you know, whispering something in someone's ear and it changing around. You know what I mean? The biggest thing that was highlighted in the Shandora backstory was that of faith versus science, right? So the whole thing was supposed to be Nolan was being the person about science, and Kolgara was supposed to be the man of faith. And it's actually, the correct answer was, like, it's okay to have faith, but science doesn't necessarily go against faith in that regard, right? A big thing in that flashback that wasn't ever addressed was the whole reason they had the bell there was to guide the souls of the dead back to the trees, right? They had their family trees that were meant to house the dead. I speculated that that may be a misunderstanding and a bastardization of the devil fruit life cycle, right? Where when a devil fruit user dies, their fruit respawns on a tree, right? Mm-hmm. That premise could still exist in that culture, but they lose the meaning of it and understanding of it when people die and those devil fruits don't come back. And then over generations, it just comes to, oh, our dead ancestors live in these trees. You can't cut them down because they're our ancestor trees. You know what I mean? But yeah, so the thing here, right? So looking at the Goro saying that, I think Im's ability is... have you seen the stuff at the moment where people think Im's a kid?
Oh, I haven't.
I've seen a few people saying that Im's a kid because in the last few chapters, Im looked really short. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I could really see Im being a kid in that regard, like a gender neutral looking kid, because the ability to shapeshift and the anger Im possesses does seem very childlike. You know what I mean? But based on this chapter, it's clear that Im's had the immortality surgery performed on them, right?
Right.
So...
Essentially. Unless he's just like an Oni that lives forever.
My question right now then is, are the Gorosei also from the Void Century? Or is it just Im? Because the Gorosei haven't aged the entire time we've seen them in the story. They've always been shown looking identical, right? And Im's presence is hidden solely because Im sits on the throne, whereas their presence is, they're just sort of like a committee. If you had a committee of people that were immortal, it makes sense that they are in charge of the world in a lot of ways. You know what I mean? That's not something you've got to hide. Whereas someone that actively dictates over them. Because you know how you were saying here how you thought it may have been Im's power to transform them? Yeah. If that is Im's power, I feel like that's sort of more along the lines then of like the imagination of a child. Isn't it? If you got a kid that can control what other people are, he's just transmuting them into devilish creatures. The only reason I don't necessarily agree with it is because I see the awakening sashes around them. So to me, that heavily implies it's a devil fruit. But then again, we don't know who made the devil fruits.
The thing that got me was basically that, like, don't look like and obviously it could just be a trick of having really weird, vague, silhouettes, but they look like weirdly twisted demonic creatures. And to me, it was really weird to just suddenly see five super weird twisted demonic creatures as well as Im, who's also the same. So to me, it was like it's probably just him doing that. Um, but like so you know what I mean? Because like I don't know. To me, it's like okay, well they all happen to have ancient zoans that have them look kind of demonic and weird. It seemed like a lot. So either it's just like a race that they have, or like
See,
maybe I don't know,
I see it
or
as
like
just
an ability that they have.
Oda just being a dick with his silhouettes, like he did with Green Bull for so long. Because we had Green Bull in the sun, we had Green Bull outside in the sun in broad daylight. Even Odin in the sun in broad daylight, and they were still silhouetted and really weirdly silhouetted.
Yeah, but it was still reasonably accurate. Like,
But I think this is
it didn't like
still.
morph.
I think this is still really reasonably accurate. It's just the general outline of them. You can still make out what they are.
But it's like wavy and like it's very. I mean, you
Well,
can barely make out what they are. Like that doesn't look like an ox fruit. That looks like a demonic ox, weird creature.
again,
Right? Like
I think that's only because we're seeing the outline of it. Because the whole thing's in silhouette.
yeah,
Like,
that's what I'm.
the
Yeah, but
bird is probably the
it's
most
literally like
intricate design.
even the bird is really weird because those wings aren't flyable
Well,
wings, right?
it
And the
depends.
head is like it
It
just looks a bit
No,
demented.
but it depends on what type of bird it is, though. You know what I mean?
I
Because,
don't think I don't think any bird looks like that except for one like an Egyptian drawing of a bird,
well, I mean, yeah, I could see that,
like
but
a or like an oni,
well,
yokai.
so this is the thing, right? Say all of these are mythical. All of these are going to be slightly odd-looking variations. I reckon what we're probably looking at is we're looking at a. I think the one that's the most ambiguous is the blonde Gorosei, because he's an actual blob. Everything else has a shape, right? Because if you look at that panel to the left of Sabo, where you see the other
Yeah,
silhouettes, you see a very distinct bull. You see a blob. You see a person. You see a bird, and you see a rhino. And then on the other side, you see the same things again, right? You see a bull, you see a person, you see a bird, you see a rhino. I think what we're looking at here is, so the bird, you know how you said it looks weird? I think it looks weird because it's going to be a mythical rock. You know what I mean? Because Oda has already had rocks in the series with Luffy's punch and also the quote unquote rock that was up in Sky Island, which was
You say
just
rock, you mean like ROCK, like rock, like
no ROC, like the mythical bird, a rock.
okay, yeah, yeah.
You know what they are, yeah? It's like a
I thought you were
firebird.
talking. I thought you were talking about the thing on the left, the blob.
No. So the blob.
Okay, so you think the bird is going to be a rock? That makes sense.
Yeah. So that's why I think it looks weird, because I think it's supposed to be a goofy Oda styled bird. You know what I mean? Because if you look at the rock, if you look at drawings of the rock, the wings are drawn the same with the head off to the side.
Yeah,
And the whole the like they are supposed to be sort of like a goofy-ish but serious looking thing, and it has the same sort of like frilled head sort of thing, if that makes sense. So I think he's a rock. I think the bull and the rhino are probably going to be the most ambiguous ones. I think they're probably going to have something to do with the Hindu god in some capacity, right? Because a rock is like a Middle Eastern to Asian deity, right?
yeah, it's Middle Eastern, yeah.
So we're probably looking for these guys being all Middle Eastern to Japanese
By the way,
animal-based deities.
saying googling rock.
Yep.
It's a common for sailors' folklore. So like sailors talk about the rock. Sailors also talk about Umi. So I think maybe we could even go by that theory to try to guess what the other ones possibly are. Maybe maybe try to find one that it's a common mythology among sailors.
So the ones that are like I was saying, the ones that are confusing me the most right now are the bull and the rhino, because I think definitively they're meant to be a bull and a rhino, but I think the problem is it's gonna be hard to figure out what they are, because I think it's going to be based on Middle Eastern mythology, and the whole point's going to be like that IMU has his like wild animals. Because for example, right, at the moment, you can cleanly look at these things and probably say they're all zones, right?
Yeah.
The blonde Gorosei that's just a blob, I actually think is going to be a Logia. Hence the non-animal based shape. Right? So we're probably looking at 5 mythical zones, including Im, and 1 Logia in this regard. Out of the Gorosei, 4 of them are mythical Logias. We've got one that clearly looks like a rock. I think the Gandhi Gorosei is also going to be a human fruit eater. I just don't know what type of mythical human he'll be. And the reason why I think that is because if Zoro fights him, right, it's almost like saying, like, how would Zoro go against someone like Luffy, who's got a mythical human fruit? You know what I mean? Because also we know, like, Sengoku has a mythical human fruit Buddha, right? So we know it's not a Buddha, but it could be something else that's very, like, maybe not sailor mythology, but is very, interesting. For example, though, as well, right? So see how, if you look at the silhouettes, Gandhi and the Rock definitely have the mythical bands every time you see them, but the others don't necessarily have those bands. I could see it where maybe instead of being a mythical zone, say the one on the right, it may be like a white rhino. You know what I mean? Say if it's not mythical, say they're just like a really high pedigree animal. If that makes sense. Yeah. With the rhino one though, sorry, not the rhino, the bull one. The problem is we've already had the cow fruit, the bull fruit, and stuff like that. You know what I mean? So the reason why I feel like he's a mythical variation is solely because we've already had the non-mythical variations of that fruit. And based on the other designs of the Gorosei here, I feel like it would be more interesting for it to be something else like that. Because the other alternative is, right, the one that looks like a rhino, right? Based on what panel you're looking at with it, the reason why I say it looks like a rhino is because you've got the eyes, but you also see the ears coming off it. But it also could just be a really awkward rendition there, where maybe those are arms, not a horn.
Yeah.
Because we only ever see one half of him in any panel.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like if you see the panel where Saba's running away, right? It almost looks more like an arm than it does a horn.
Yeah.
But the problem is if you look at its face and when you can see that ear definitely makes it look like it's a fucking rhino horn.
Yeah, definitely.
Right. Which also raises up another like interesting thing, right? So 2 of them I'm saying are awakened, confirmed, no matter what. But I would like to assume all of them are awakened. Wouldn't you?
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably assume it. I mean,
being the Gorosei?
Especially if they've been around for a long time. They'd know all the secrets, so they'd know what to do.
So, a mythical bull. I feel like in terms of bull, because it wouldn't be a minotaur or anything like that, right? Ooh. Wouldn't be a minotaur or anything like that. What about the What about like something ridiculous like a star sign bull? You know, like the bullfruit mythical model constellation.
Taurus.
Yeah, the Taurus constellation.
I mean, like I googled oh, I went over it. Just googled bull yokai.
Yep.
There is an ox oni, which is like an ox head with like a spider's body. And I feel like there's a picture of it, and I feel like I've seen that picture so many times. It
Oh,
must be a
that's
reasonably popular Japanese.
yeah,
Thing,
dude.
I've seen that picture so many.
That is a really popular thing, and I think it was actually something that Black Maria was semi based on as well. Not on a variation, not that specific one, but yeah, I have seen that heaps. Honestly, that actually looks more fitting as well. Because if you look at the bull, it actually almost looks like it does have spider legs off to the side.
Yeah, like a thick body, right?
Yeah, so for a mythical bull fruit, I could see that being it actually.
And then that's where like I
Ushioni.
go to the yokai stuff is like, you know, like maybe they're just all like different types of yokai.
Okay, what about a human yokai? What human yokais do they have? Nah, that wouldn't work. I think the blonde one at the moment is a Logia, and I think that may actually be because obviously him having colored hair probably means he's the youngest Gorosei, right? Probably meaning that they actually ran out of when he was a part of it and getting his fruit, they probably ran out of fucking like mythical zones.
Yeah. The other thing as well is that it could just be kind of like some kind of yokai that's like a screaming face, or like, you know, like it'd be so hard to look it up.
See, the problem
Like,
is like a
I could
rock.
totally see that just being a demon, like just being a big, like fluid thing that just like screams at you.
True, but I would say in defense of that is it's meant to like. I mean, first things first. Does this not confirm that all the Gorosei are combatants? Like they straight up took.
Or at least they can fight.
Well,
Yeah.
they straight up took a fire fist to the face, and all of them walked it off.
True, but that's if this isn't IMU doing all of this.
Yeah, but even if it's IMU doing it, right? All IMU did here, like they still copped the fire before IMU transformed them. In that regard.
Well, I mean, all we saw was them in their silhouette forms while on fire.
Yes.
So it could have been that the silhouette forms encased them as the fire hit them to protect them. I haven't done anything good on bird yokai, by the way, and I'm pretty sure rock is like a good one. So
well,
I think it's like a bird yokai. I think it probably is just a rock.
I think maybe it may be a mix. Some of these being mythical and some of them being yokai. You know what I mean? Like, because all of them will be quote unquote like a yokai, because they'll all be sort of like a mythical weird thing that's like monstrous, obviously, because they're going to be poorly betrayed. But it's like being a legitimate yokai, maybe a different story here. Because it's like if you got the Umibozu being Im, that's a yokai. If you got the Spider Bull, that's a yokai. That's 2 yokai out of the 6 of them here. But then having one as a rock, it's like that doesn't necessarily fall into it, but it still looks monstrous. You know what I mean? But it's enough for it to stay interesting. So
the humanoid one is the swordsman, right?
Yeah. A mythical human fruit. Mythical human fruit. That would work for a swordsman. Because, like... I don't know. Does this get you more hyped for Luffy versing Saturn? Or just so-so? Because if he is that bull spider yokai... it wouldn't really I don't know how that would go artistically for a fight. Do you?
By the way, there's a yokai which is a Buddhist high priest's kimono which turned into a yokai, and it's a master swordsman, and it's a kimono.
What's the name of it?
Oh, Eritatagoromo.
Wait, say it again.
Eritatagoromo. Send it to you. It does not look very humanoid, to be honest with you.
Where are we? Here we go. Because that would be funny if he's actually just a mythical.
It would just be funny if like he just didn't have a fruit, but he had a kimono that had a fruit on it.
I mean, that could work as well.
Yeah. It's something Oda would definitely do. It's such an Oda thing.
Because do you know what would actually be very threatening as well? He is actually the most scary Gorosei, because I mean, he could have a kimono fruit. His sword could have a fruit, and he could have a fruit.
Yeah.
Like 3 zones just merged together fighting. I'm damn well cemented at this point in time based on, like, have you seen the Umibozo? I'm damn well confident that that's what Im's supposed to be at this point. Right? Or at least even before having the, like, even if he's got a fruit that's not the Umibozo fruit, he's designed to look like an Umibozo. Just to, like, especially with the shape-shifting and stuff like that. Because it could be something where it may just be like, you know, he has the shiftu no mi, and he can just shape-shift. You know what I mean? But, you know how I was saying I don't think that Devil's Tail is him?
Yeah.
Say it is him, it'd be interesting that he takes shape as a devil, being a yokai.
Well, I got a bit more evidence for that, by the way. If you scroll down to when Sabo gets stabbed, you see what looks like Imu's head behind it.
See, what I was saying before is I don't think that looks like Imu's head. I think that looks like the other Gorosei that were behind him.
Yeah, it seems to me like because it's massive and it's...
Yeah, but all of the Gorosei are massive. All of them stand at like 3 times his height here.
Yeah, I don't know.
If anything, do you know what it actually looks like? Going back and re-looking at it. You know the blonde Gorosei, the one that's the blob?
Yeah. It could be the blob one, but I don't think it's the bull one because you'd see the horns.
Yeah, well, originally I thought it was the tail. So I thought it was any of, like, it could have been any of them, and they all have the same tail because they're all zones.
Yeah.
And they just, it's like a finger pistol with their tail.
It literally looks like it's just coming out of nowhere, right? Like you can just see where it ends. Like it's just like a streak that appears in the middle of the air. It could be some Bleach shit where it's just like unblockable. It spawns inside you, like.
But if you're looking at it, right, Cobra says D Lily. He says D, and obviously it's focusing on Im like it's going to be Im, right? You get Cobra that's impaled, but then you focus on the blonde Gorosei being the first one to notice Sabo, right? Yeah. If it was the blonde Gorosei, he's attacked him. Sabo's jumped over him, so he's the first person to notice because he's looking at it. They all get attacked. While they're attacked, Im transforms, shapeshifting into a dragon to eat the fire, right? Then it cuts down. All the other Gorosei have transformed in that first panel, except for the blonde Gorosei, who's hunched over, right? Because then you cut to the other scene, and as he's starting to take more shape there, he's the blob behind Sabo attacking with the tail. Because you see him trying to open his mouth and eat them as well.
Okay, with that said, though, if you go back down to when Sabo gets cut,
Yep.
stabbed, after that panel, you see he's like King Cobra, and then you see that those eyes behind him.
Yeah, and it's trying to open its mouth.
Yeah, but its mouth is in that jagged pattern, the same that Imu had his mouth in when he blocked the fire.
True, but I think Imu's is different because Imu's eyes have the Imu eyes in them. In every panel we see Imu,
that's true.
He's got the ringlets, doesn't he?
Well, except for when he's crawling down the building, isn't it?
Yeah, true. Except for when he's crawling down the building. But because looking at it there, it almost looks like the blonde Gorosei attacked, then Sabo came in, counter-attacked, and then he was already like partially not in his proper form because he'd already attacked with the tail. And then because when you come through, that tail, obviously it's coming from that one that's behind them, right?
Yeah.
The panel's really confusing because at first it looks like it just stabs Cobra, but it stabs Cobra by coming around under Sabo's leg, through Sabo's chest, and through Cobra. Right? Then they fall over. That thing starts opening its mouth, but while it's opening its mouth, Cobra stands up. But if you see this, like the scene while it's standing up, right? The one right in front of Cobra looks like it's the bull one because that looks like the horn. And then you see, sorry, the rhino one, because you see the horn. And then you see in that next panel when Cobra's on the ground, you see standing over him is who would be Saturn and the Gandhi Gorosei. You know what I mean? So it doesn't look like Imu advanced past them. And honestly, it doesn't, like, I don't think Imu would need to, almost. You know what I mean? But it definitely could be either way. The problem is it coming off screen. So like you know the panel where you first see the tail start to move? If you look up in the middle panel above that, Sabo's watching him. The person standing on the angle where that attack comes from is Saturn.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Getcha.
Oh! Ooh! Do you know what actually would be cool? What if that arrow's Saturn's club? His walking stick. Even if it is Imu that's controlling it, right? Like regardless of if it's Imu controlling it or not, because based on where the tailor comes from, it's where that Gorosei Saturn's standing, right? But you know how it looks like it whips up from the floor, and we're saying like it looks like it comes out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
It almost could just be like whether it's Saturn or it's Im itself. The bottom of the walking stick gets turned into a devil's tail and just whips through and stabs him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because, like, in all the panels before that, Saturn's the one on that side, standing right there with the walking stick, like, point blank where that tail comes from.
Yeah. It's just like, how did the walking stick turn into that, though?
Yeah, and like I'm saying, like, at this point in time, it's just going to be a waiting game, right? Because it's either going to be Im or it's going to be Saturn. In that regard, for the most part. You know what I mean? I feel like it'll probably be Saturn because it'll be more threatening when it happens randomly when we cut back to Egghead. You know what I mean? But then again, I mean, we've got the silhouettes here. Remember that silhouette that was going around destroying cameras that looked identical to Saturn? Maybe the Gorosei, like you said, maybe the Gorosei's abilities are entrusted to them from Im. So maybe they have their devil fruits, but on top of their devil fruits, they also have this like ambiguous blob ability that's like a bit of Ims with them.
It's like, you've got to remember, right? We haven't actually seen anyone from the world government use whatever the hell power the world government had to oppose the ancient kingdom. Seeing more and more about how insanely powerful the ancient kingdom was and all of their ridiculous technology, but we're not seeing how the world government in the Void Century actually managed to beat them, they must have had some crazy abilities on their
I
side.
mean,
And I don't think it was just they had equal technology, because otherwise it's like, what's like, you wouldn't be saying
dude,
the Ancient Kingdom had great technology. You would just be saying they used to have, in general, great technology.
I mean,
So like,
at,
honestly think like it's entirely possible that like and all these people from this like ancient time could have like literal powers that are just completely different to the fruits, completely different to Haki, that we just haven't seen yet.
well, I would say it's okay. At the moment, I think it's a fruit ability, but the way the fruit ability manifests could be very unique.
Thing
Right?
that wigs me about the thing that wigs me out about the fruits is that it seems like it's sort of implied that the ancient kingdom are the ones that created the fruits,
Yes.
and that since they generally have a will of their own, they probably had like a lot of control over the fruits. They had most of the fruit powers, etc. So to me, it's like, how do you have way less technology than them and way worse fruits in general than them, but you still
Well,
manage to overthrow them without having your own sort of powers?
I think what ends up happening in that situation is false alignment and then betrayal. So, hear me out on this hypothetical, right? Ancient kingdoms got vast resources, is expanding and terraforming and just absolutely smashing down, going nose first down the middle of the Grand Line, right? They have all the technology that we've seen so far in the story at their disposal, right? Do you know what makes that fucking terrifying more than anything? Some of the most scary technology, like we know that they've got stuff that destroys islands, right? With the ancient weapons. But some of their scariest stuff isn't ancient weapon related. It's teleportation and resources, right? Do you know what was brought up originally in Alabasta that we haven't really had re-established that's illegal in the world of One Piece?
The rain dust?
Yeah, dance powder. Imagine if they're just colonizing island after island and that technology is a remnant of the ancient kingdom and they're just going down and to fuel their country's progression, they're using dance power that's stealing resources and stuff from countries around them, right? And it doesn't matter because there's no repercussions to them because they can just teleport new materials and stuff like that to their own kingdoms to supply their own development, right? These other countries, say the original 20 kingdoms, ally with them and then form a coup d'etat against them. So in the period of time that they're allied with them, they're taking in their resources too, getting things like devil fruits made for them as well. That
I just think like from a narrative perspective, they have to have sort of like have to have their own thing.
Well,
because I don't think it can just be like a oh yeah, the ancient kingdom was really amazing and really powerful and incredible, but they were just sort of dumb and then they just sort of got too messy and then they just fell apart and then we took over. I think it has to be because for the narrative of the story, it has to be like, no, we destroyed them, we crushed them. Luffy, you have no hope of taking this out.
I think we've already seen parts of that though, because like, say it starts off with them getting some of their technology for themselves, hence them having devil fruits here, right?
Hmm?
But then imagine it's like a country of Luffy's and Vegapunks, and those are the only two type of people that live, like that exist in that country. You know, idiotic, idealistic dreamers and super geniuses that can make it all possible. What happens if you have an entire country populated by people like that, and then you introduce one Doflamingo? You know what I mean?
Okay.
What I see happening here, based on what I'm seeing here, is like they had such advancements in like they had so much development. They were only ever focused on progress, not the repercussions. So they may have left themselves vulnerable to people manipulating to get what they want and then them trying to overthrow them. And I'm not saying that that's all they had, but what I'm saying is technologies that they may have made or implemented may never have been intended for any form of weaponization that then got weaponized by the Ancient 20. But by the original 20. For example, you know that thing we saw that destroyed the Lucia Kingdom? Right?
Yeah.
Is that one of the ancient weapons, or is that just something that utilizes similar technology to an ancient weapon that the 20 kingdoms used or replicated themselves to have their own versions of a weapon? Because if you look at the actual ancient weapons, quote unquote, so far, you have a giant ship that's capable of destroying an island, and a princess that's able to communicate and control Sea Kings, right? Neither of them are necessarily an evil commodity. You have a girl that can communicate and talk to fish. Sweet, she's Aquaman, right? You have a ship that can destroy an island. But what if that ship was designed not to destroy islands to kill people, but a mining vessel? Destroy an island and collect its resources after. Whereas the thing that destroyed the Lucia Kingdom, that just looks like just pure, it's meant to be a death ray. You know what I mean?
It's possible. I just don't see that. Like, I don't see the world government winning by technology.
Well, I mean, yeah.
The whole point was that like the ancient kingdom was all about the technology, and that's what made them so dangerous. But the hard thing with it is that they're being given everything, right? Like they're being given the technology advantage, and now it's like, oh, and they also created the devil fruits. So they have the devil fruit advantage, and now it's like, oh yeah, they also had like poneglyphs, and they were with like wano and shit, and it's like,
do you want the easy win condition?
All the supreme grade swords, like it's ridiculous.
Do you want the easy win condition? Again, I forgot I didn't. You weren't in the stream, so I didn't get to talk to you about this. Do you know what most likely would have happened then? The 20 kingdoms, as far as we know, have heavy association with slavery. Right?
Yeah.
So if you have an ancient kingdom full of good people that are just trying to progress, have progress for the world, what happens if they come up against an army of innocent slaves? And they don't have the ability to fight back at all. Otherwise, all they're doing is just killing innocent people, not their actual enemies.
I mean, I don't think they would just like surrender though, right?
Well, they didn't surrender, but if you had armies going in, right? Say like even these Gorosei members, if you had them leading a battalion of slave soldiers, right, which would be very celestial dragon fitting, you know what I mean? It's like, sweet. All of a sudden now, the ancient kingdom can't fight back against groups of people that are innocent, but they're also stuck fighting people that are mixed in, that are evil, that are strong.
I would program an army of pacifistas that don't have explosive rounds, and give them an auto target AI feature that targets only non-slaves.
What happens if the slaves has the celestial dragon collars and it's straight up surrender or we will kill them?
Well, then they would just have to surrender, right?
Yeah.
I think the fact that they've like written the poneglyphs and all of this stuff, and they've like, I honestly feel like maybe like even the devil fruits was like a desperation play.
The problem with that is, based on this chapter, the poneglyphs existed before the end of the Void Century.
Yeah, they existed before the end of the Void Century, but it seems like they were created when they were losing the war.
Does it?
What it seems like to me is that they knew that they were inevitably going to lose the war, so they created all of these things based on like the concept of fate and destiny to essentially set up a prophecy so that the Dawn can come back, so that like Joy Boy can be reborn, and that they can eventually take over the world government in the future. It's like what it seems like to me, because all of these things are like remnants that are supposed to guide the person to Laugh Tale to help them take back over and da da da.
But I mean, we also know that the story of the poneglyphs is just a funny story.
Well,
which makes it hard, right? Like I know I'm being a dick here with the devil's advocate thing, but the reason I'm doing that is because it's
it's not just a funny story though. It's like it's just Roger laughed, but it could have literally just been like, "Oh, the world's fucked." Like,
But the whole crew laughed, and like they literally went, "Oh, it's such." Like Roger's words were, "That's such a funny story. I wish I lived in your time, Joy Boy."
yeah.
So I don't necessarily know if the poneglyphs
I mean,
themselves.
is having to surrender because you don't want to kill slaves? Is that a funny story?
Yeah, but that's the thing. The poneglyphs existing before the end of the Void Century may imply that they actually don't tell every part of the Void Century.
That's what I mean by like I think it was like at the end of the war and they were like, oh my god, we're gonna lose this. It's inevitable, but we need to prepare for a new dawn in the future. Let's send what's her name forward in time. Let's
But
somehow make Joy Boy like a reoccurring character. And
in
then
that problem though, again, they collected all the poneglyphs.
yeah,
You know what I
so
mean?
they were like utterly defeated. I think.
Yeah. It it's hard, right? Because knowing that it's a funny story that's on the poneglyphs doesn't mean that that's all it is. Because we know it also talks about the locations of the ancient weapons and the nature of it, right? But again, all those things could have and probably would have existed well before the end of the Void Century, which means they would have existed well before necessarily all the 20 kingdoms came together in that regard. Because it's 100-year void, right? It's only at the very end of that 100 years that the 20 people came together.
Yeah, but like they were. It was probably like 100-year war, close to it.
But the problem is with it being a quote unquote 100-year war is you have someone like Toki who had no idea about those events.
Well, that's the thing, and so like some of the poneglyphs could literally just be telling about the start of the 100-Year War, and some of them could be telling about the middle of the 100-Year War, and then some later on, or maybe they just kept historical documentation throughout the 100-Year War, and they only actually got all the history destroyed when they lost the war, obviously, because they'd have their own libraries that they're protecting,
I
and it's only when they actually got defeated that all the libraries would get burned.
I think that the poneglyphs may
And
only
even then, O'Hara was able to amass some of that knowledge.
I think the poneglyphs may only actually entail maybe the first half of the Void Century. And the other half of it will need to be explained through Im. And my reason for thinking that is because who is our first and foremost most educated person on the Void Century in the world of One Piece? Robin?
Robin.
Robin. Robin, remember back in the end of Alabasta, when Cobra was like, our family was meant to protect the poneglyphs, and Robin just went, "Don't make me laugh. Your family your family are the problem."
Yeah.
Right? But then here we find out that, Queen Lily was a D. So either Robin's misinformed, meaning the information on the poneglyphs isn't complete. Hence why Rayleigh was like, find out the Void Century. You may come to a different conclusion when we do. You're just going to have to go on your own journey and come to your own conclusion.
Because I mean, like, the thing is that before Lily betrayed the world government and spread the poneglyphs out,
she would have been an enemy.
Was on the side.
Yeah.
So everything that's in the poneglyphs would say that Lily is the enemy. Because Lily didn't change until the poneglyphs had already been written. And then she's the one that got him out, unless she like wrote another one because she knew how to do it somehow.
It depends on the situation. Because again, she had one of the poneglyphs in Alabasta. And they had built a tomb to protect said poneglyph.
At the same time, she didn't even make it back to Alabasta.
Exactly.
So we really don't know what she did to spread them out everywhere.
But no, like she never made it back to Alabasta, right? Yeah. We know her brother took over. So one of the poneglyphs made it back to Alabasta with a letter from her, right? So her brother would have built a tomb to protect the poneglyphs under her guard. which makes it seem like maybe it happened more in the middle of the Void Century, to an extent, than actually at the end of it, is what I'm saying.
Wait, what happened? The poneglyphs happened?
That the poneglyphs were probably written. So it's 100 years, right? The poneglyphs probably cover anywhere between year 1 to year 70 of the Void Century, right? Say the war happened at the end of it, they stop recording history at that point in time, but it's evident that, like, stuff has happened. Maybe they make one more poneglyph after that time, being Joy Boy's apology letter to Poseidon. Right?
So what do you think happened? Like, why do you think they wrote the poneglyphs? What do you think was the purpose of them writing it then?
Well, based on what we know so far about them, it was just a catalogue of where their locations are and a certain part of history that is a funny story from Joy Boy.
But why would they use a very specific method that you have to use to write on the poneglyphs with a very specific language that is later deleted from existence? And they write it on an indestructible stone so the messages can never be
The better question is, why is it not the ancient kingdom that made them? We know the Kozuki made them.
The Kozuki were allied / a part of the ancient kingdom.
But the only reason we believe that, though, is because of the poneglyphs themselves, right?
Yeah, and just a bunch of, like, broad historical links around the dawn and stuff that they believe in.
Yeah. So, like, it could be something...
Pretty, like,
it could be something more that the
solid.
poneglyphs themselves, though, weren't made by the ancient kingdom. It's just... Maybe they had a... because this is the problem, right? It's like... 800 years ago, all of this was already wrapped up. Right?
Yeah.
So 800 years ago, all of this was solved. So what I'm more saying is there's probably a bit of a grace period between all of the stuff being solved and them starting to go, okay, we're going to start acknowledging history again. You know what I mean? Implying that the stuff probably wrapped up a little bit before 800 years ago. Meaning, if it wrapped up a little bit before 800 years ago, the recording of it probably wrapped up even a little bit before the end of the conflict, say with the exception of maybe 1 or 2 poneglyphs, which were, that we know, are things like apologies that they failed after the fact. Since
the point of the story is that after 100 years of war, the 20 original families won and were victorious over the ancient kingdom and then formed the world government, and that's where history
But it wasn't
starts.
100 years of war.
Over 100 years of nothingness.
Yes.
That is recorded.
Yes.
Yeah. So, but what I mean is the start of history, so the end of the 100-year period, so 800 years ago, was when they had won and they had formed the world government.
Yes. And I'm
so
saying...
You're saying it's going to take like 10 years for them to go from winning the war to forming the world government.
Well, it may have to. For example, right, we know that Im knows of the poneglyphs and collected all the poneglyphs. Right? Does that mean all the poneglyphs were in one location?
Possibly they were yet to be distributed.
Okay.
And the final location was raided.
Okay. That can make perfect sense. Right? But then why do we have cultures around the world with those writings on them? That that aren't on the poneglyph itself? Because
they were like, that language already existed.
But that language...
just like the ancient languages exist.
But that language is just the language of the Kozuki, is the problem there.
Sure, and now it's been completely erased from history.
Yes, but what I'm more saying is, like, if it was the example that they were all in one location and they were yet to be distributed, why is it there's places like Sky Island where that writing exists all over the place prior?
Because I just think that, like, that language
was common.
One of the world's many languages. Not common, but yeah, not uncommon.
Like, common enough for the ancient kingdom, right?
It was common enough that people in other islands and other kingdoms could learn the language.
See,
it wasn't being actively suppressed.
The problem I have with that is if that was the case, they wouldn't be able to suppress it if it was a semi-common language. there would be more
That's
writing
what I
than
mean,
just the
but I don't
poneglyphs.
think it's like insanely common. I just feel like it was like that Kazuki language was like this ancient language that they used to write like secret messages, sort of thing. Like most people spoke common, but people also use this language. Like again, like the story isn't going to be ultimately perfectly consistent. Like these are like ancient drawings, and they're drawn in an ancient language, and all that's cool, you know.
I know, like I get that, but it's just one of those things where it's like it could be. It may not be that 900 years ago something started and 800 years ago it finished. It may be we covered 900 to 800 years ago, right? But really, it was sort of 890 years ago that the events actually started happening. And it wasn't until 810 years ago that they finished. And we had like a 10-year grace period front and back to just make sure that nothing could be linked to them. You know what I mean? The healthy zone for what was actually being eradicated probably sits more in the middle of the Void Century than it does at either end of it. You know what I mean? Because based on the 20 Kingdoms, right? Like it's not like they hid Im's name. You know what I mean? They just hid the Void, like the Ancient Kingdom and stuff relating to the Ancient Kingdom, which is probably more so relating to they hid the existence of advanced technology. So they could have an easier lid on controlling and manipulating people. And they wouldn't be able to have people rise up against them and have as much of a challenging situation. Because, I mean, information is a weapon. You know what I mean? But the problem I have with it is stuff like the poneglyphs may not necessarily even be... Like, we could be confusing two separate things here. Because it all exists at the same time. For example, right, Joy Boy. We know Joy Boy was able to have messages recorded on the poneglyphs, right? What if the poneglyphs aren't from the Ancient Kingdom, but they're from Joy Boy, and Joy Boy himself has nothing to do with the Ancient Kingdom, and it's the same sort of thing where it's like, say the Ancient Kingdom is the modern day equivalent of the world government, right? Im and the 20 Kingdoms are Dragon and the Revolutionaries, and Luffy and Joy Boy are the same thing. You know what I mean? And it's like a record of Luffy's journey also incorporates what happened to the rest of the world, but it's not necessarily made by either side. That also could be very possible.
Yeah, it's a possibility.
Because, and the reason I say that is because it's like, okay, the Ancient Kingdom was completely eradicated, yes, right? But the other groups and allies and whatnot relating to it aren't necessarily any super they're not necessarily advanced in their own capacity, but what they are is they're all existing in cultures really far away from the sea. Like Fishman Island, 10,000 meters below the sea, had the poneglyphs and had the apology from Joy Boy. You have Skypiea and Wano, thousands of meters up in the air, and Zoe, thousands of meters up in the air, away from the sea, with little bits of information and records of it. You know what I mean? So it's all very obscure places that may have actually not been involved in this conflict itself. Because we had the whole thing with Toki. Toki had no idea about what the Void Century was, based on her flashback. In the Odin flashback. Like, Odin was like, oh, we're doing this mystery. And Toki was like, well, you have to keep searching to find out what the mystery is, because I don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It complicates it more.
It could always just be one of those things where it's like, if you go in future end of the time and you just tell everybody what happens, it's like, kind of like destroys the time paradox or whatever, right?
But we also know that all her information she sort of gathered through Odin.
Yeah.
But at the same point in time, Odin, I point to you there, Odin also says to her, it's like, if you go 20 more years in the future, you'll find what you're looking for. You know what I mean? So it's like
Yeah.
it's ambiguous as to whether or not she has any clue about it, or if her general running away from oppression, all it would take is 20 more years for her to find that, because it would be Luffy's generation where oppression gets demolished. You know what I mean? It makes it more complicated than just the ancient
Toki
kingdom.
was really weird because she had this idea about the dawn coming, and she was trying to like search for this specific time period, but at the same time she also kind of didn't know anything.
But she wasn't looking for a specific time period. The only stuff relating to her searching for a specific time period comes from one small scene with Odin, and it's when Odin's captured, and he's like, you know, Toki, if you just jump 20 more years in the future, you'll find the time you're looking for. But that doesn't necessarily mean that she was looking for this specific time. It could be, like I was saying, it could just be like, in 20 more years, the world's going to be liberated. You were looking for liberation. You just didn't know that you were ever going to find it. That's why you kept jumping in the future.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not... There's nothing to confirm that she had any idea or knowledge or had any purpose for doing what she did until she met Odin, and Odin's purpose of trying to learn it, her being his husband, was like, I'm going to stand by you in your dream of finding it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's just like, it just so happened that because he had the lineage of being a Kozuki, being one of the people that made those poneglyphs, that it even existed in the first place. You know? It's fucking... It's weird. It's hard. Because at the moment, like a hard question is going to be to answer, is the world government the bad guy? Because they're the bad guy now, but were they the bad guy back then? You know what I mean? Or did they bastardize over time?
That's the thing, is that like... So it's hard because you want to have a nuanced take on it, and you want to just kind of say like, any sort of fascistic government who controls the world is inherently always going to become evil in some sense. And so, you know, no matter what happens, if one person rules the world, one group of people rule the world, will always end up wrong. And you can go for that like nuanced message, but that's a bit of a downer, because then like if Luffy does end up taking over the world government,
he will eventually become bad.
Institutes, yeah, it's like, well, what did you even solve? Who gives a shit?
Because
but if they also give that take of just like oh yeah, we beat the bad guys, now we put in a perfectly good government and everything's gravy, it's like, well, that's just a bit too simplistic, not really congruent with how complex the story has been so far.
And this is the thing where I think in the long run, one of the things that's going to end up happening in One Piece is it's going to be a cycle, and the happy ending may be temporary. You know what I mean? Every couple of generations, we may need a Joy Boy. You know what I mean? Because one of the things that I was going down the rabbit hole with, right, is, so based in this chapter, right, Im's immortal. Im existed in the Void Century, right? So, but we also have the 19 swords that were planted and a vow made by everyone that no one person would sit on the throne. So either Im was in charge of all these people, and that was a falsehood made from the very beginning, right? It was an active lie to tell the world, and they were just like, we'll solve it. And Im's the big bad from the beginning of the Void Century, right? Or it's you live long enough to become the villain, where they were the good guys. Im just so happened throughout the course of his life to have had the immortality surgery made on him, right? He takes the vow not to sit on the throne with the other 20 kingdoms, but then as time goes on and the other rulers die, because he doesn't die, people just keep coming to him for advice because he would be the most old and educated person in those groups, until eventually they just usher him into ruling the world. Like, it depends on based how Oda's going to play with that, because it's like, either the Ancient Kingdom were good guys that's like scared bad guys, so bad guys came together to get rid of them, in which case Queen Lily looks really bad in a retrospective. That she joined bad teams and then after the fact regretted it. Or the Ancient Kingdom were bad guys because maybe they didn't mean to be bad guys, but maybe they did bad things for good reasons, or just didn't care about the repercussions of what they did, which in turn caused bad things to happen. For example, like I was saying before, right, if none of the races in One Piece are natural, their genetic manipulation could have created entire groups of people that were then becoming slaves based on the perks of their genetic factors that had been manipulated with by other kings that had nothing to do with them. You know what I mean? Like, the fishmen being 10 times stronger than a human. It's like, all of a sudden, it's like, oh, there's this new race that's fishmen. We created them. Go out into the world and live life and you'll be happy, We made people that could breathe in the water. It's awesome, right? And they're like, yeah, this is great. And then they go out and start living, and then people are like, you can breathe underwater? Shit, we need work done under the water. Do you want to do this for us? No? Oh, bam, bomb collar around your neck. Okay, you're going to go do this for us. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And then it's like, over time, it depends on how it gets bastardized. Because I think one of the big things at the moment is it's like, Luffy is supposed to be thematically the correct person in the story. Meaning Dragon's got to be wrong in some capacity. But is it that Dragon's wrong in some capacity, or is it Dragon is just this generation's version of an imp? Where it's
honestly,
like
the vibe that I got from last chapter with the Revs sitting around that table, it's like they're literally just a military organization. They're not some like all-knowing people that see the truth behind the veil. They came off as just like you just think the world government's bad because of all the slavery and all of the overtaxation and all of this normal things, and we want to take out the world government because we think they're bad.
Which may have been how the 20 Kings started as well. And then over time, once you take that responsibility, it's like, fuck, it's a lot harder to make the world okay than not.
Like, everyone's always talking about how, like, oh, I wonder if, like, Dragon knows that Im is there, like, maybe, like, he was an admiral in the Marines and then he learnt some deep secret about, like, I literally just think, like, maybe he was, like, an admiral in the Marines or whatever, but I literally just, from that conversation, sort of, like, the vibe that I got is basically just, like, he just, like, saw the world government doing a bunch of really bad stuff and said, we need to stop this, and eventually he got to the breaking point where he was like, I'm gonna make this stop. He just created the Revolutionary Army. And again, at the start, it was the freedom fighters, and he was just fighting against slavery, and it just kept escalating. And now he's like fighting this unending, unwinnable war against the world, and he just like, I have to just keep going. I've come too far. Like, I don't think he has like this extreme knowledge that we're not privy to.
Well, I mean, obviously, so since Sabo's about to tell him about him now, we're either going to find out that Dragon knows or didn't know about it. And in either situation, say he does know about it, and it's like, that's part of the reason why I wanted to do this. It's like, okay, well then what situation let you escape? What situation, like, because, like, looking at Sabo here, this event made Sabo the Flame Emperor, right? Meaning, he saw Im and survived. He's probably going to have one of the highest bounties in the series, full stop. Yeah. Right? Like, I wouldn't be surprised if his bounty's currently higher than Kaido's.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is, it's like, does Dragon actually have shit? Like that we've saved him for so long. I don't have any doubt. Like, and I feel fucking vindicated now. Actually, just letting me get this out. Right? How many times have I said, I think the Gorosei are probably going to be strong? Right? How many times did I put them on lists? And like, I've had so many times, like me and you being on like randomly online, and someone being like, the Gorosei are just figureheads. They're gonna have no combat ability. You're dumb. Blah 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 blah. And people always jump to intelligent. Like, people always jump to insult someone's intelligence because it's like, oh, you believe this thing that I don't? Well, just because we haven't seen it yet, you're fucking dumb. And it's like, hey, here we are, fucking 10 years later. Guess what? We were right. We weren't right about everything, but you know what? They survived a fire fist to the face, and do you know what? That took out Jesus Burgess, didn't it? So, at the moment, these guys are sitting around at the moment dealing something point blank that a First Division commander couldn't, so fuck you. But the problem I have here is the Gorosei have always tried to maintain power. Right? Is it that they want to maintain power for themselves, or is it that because they've always been holding onto a bit of a balance, trying to not let the world get too unstable, and they have been letting other countries get involved in the world government. For example, the Fishmen only became part of the world government 200 years ago. So it's not like they're against other races joining, even though they do know they have people like the Celestial Dragons that are bad. But they were like, remember when Jinbei wasn't joining with the world government against Whitebeard? They were like, it's such a terrible shame because Jinbei was a pinnacle of peace between our peoples.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, despite all the bad shit they're doing, ultimately they've been doing it for what they think is the greater good. Right?
Yeah.
The problem is it the greater good so that they don't get killed by Im? They're just trying to keep Im pleased and keep shit like reasonably intact and the Celestial Dragons on top? Or is it because it's like from their time period, it's like, look, the Celestial Dragons are a small price to pay compared to what came before it. If that makes sense. Because like, imagine if in the Ancient Kingdom you had someone like a Celestial Dragon now, like the Saint Charlos, but they had the intelligence of Vegapunk.
Yeah.
That wouldn't be a fucking good person at all, would it? Like,
nope.
that to the world would scare a lot of people. So it's a hard situation. Whether it was Im or one of the Gorosei, though, the fact that they almost one-shot Sabo here is fucking wild. Because it means one of two things, right? It either means they have really good Haki, or these abilities let them hit a Logia without Haki.
That's true. Sabo is a Logia.
Which could mean they may be able to hurt, like, depending on what this ability is, it may bypass any defense, like, say, Luffy's rubber body.
Yeah.
Which could be very threatening. You know what I mean? Which of their designs is your favorite design of the Gorosei at the moment? In these silhouette forms.
Probably the human.
The Gandhi?
Is the coolest. Yeah, for sure.
I agree. Weirdly enough, I
don't like weird monster forms, but I really like strange humanoid forms, elongated limbs and stuff like that, like
alien looking
cool.
sort of things, as opposed to monsters.
Because I think that the problem with monstrous things is that humans are somewhat the perfect form for combat kind of thing, right? Whereas if you're a rhino and you're on all fours and you're running at someone what's his name, the Flying Six dude, the Flying Six Tyrannosaurus dude, the Rhinosaurus dude, Triceratops.
I'm confused now. The Triceratops dude? You mean
the Triceratops dude from the Flying Six, yeah. Sasaki, that's it, yeah. Someone like Sasaki's ability, it's is that really that helpful when all you can do is just run straight at someone?
Whereas in hybrid forms, they're always a lot more entertaining.
Yeah, because you're humanoid, right? That's why hybrid is specifically so much better.
Oh my god!
Humanoid form, and that's the best combat form. So to me, it's having a humanoid being who's just maybe they can stretch a little bit longer, they have a bit longer arms or something like that. They just have a little bit more of an advantage, and then they're just stronger in general. That's scary.
Sasaki's hybrid form sucks ass. I just had to remind myself what it looked like then, because I just couldn't picture it for a minute. I think either way, we have another problem to deal with. The event at Egghead is going to involve an Admiral, one of these characters here, and the Straw Hats. And you know how they said it was going to be an event that would shock the world? Do you know what the problem I have with that? you know how we talked about what could really shock the world? Because they didn't even say that about Luffy defeating Kaido. Even though that was shocking. What if, because what's set up in Egghead at the moment is Vegapunk's wanting to be able to transmit knowledge to the whole world, right? Now we have this Sabo flashback here where he needs to get a message to Luffy. But we also have Vivi and Wapple who are captured, but we don't know how they escape here yet, right?
Yeah.
Sabo may flee with Wapple and Vivi and then offload them to Morgan's. Morgan's may be taking them to Egghead or trying to find the Straw Hats so that they can collect Vivi. Right? Like, Morgan's is just, trying to get a scoop, be nearby and drop that information off. And it may result in the information of IMU's existence being leaked to the world through Vegapunk's mass communication.
Right.
Because an event to shock the whole world, unbeknownst to anyone, like unlike anything before, would be that there is someone sitting on the empty throne. You know what I mean? And that could also fit into an easy way to transition into sort of beginning final conflicts as well. You know what I mean? Because say everyone else finds out there's someone sitting on the empty throne, that then raises a new issue, right? You know how Doflamingo was talking about the throne wars? All of a sudden, you've got a new target for all the pirates. You've got a new target for the revolutionaries. You've got a new target for the likes of Cross Guild. If you all of a sudden find out there has always been someone ruling the whole world, everyone's going to start gunning for that position now.
Yeah.
So we may end up, if that ends up leaking, it may end up starting a power struggle towards the world government more than it already has, which may end up resulting in them starting to do a lot of mass cleansings on places. I don't know. I feel like before this flashback ends, we've still got to solve how Vivi and Wapple meet Morgan's and escape. So I think at least half of next chapter, if not all of it, is going to continue in this flashback. And then after that, I think the reverie's done. And we're back to present time. Do you?
Yeah. I'm not going to lie. Like, obviously I've been enjoying all of these things, but it's felt like this reverie is... I feel like if you're a really casual viewer, I'd be like, wait, hang on. Is this happening now? Or did this happen before Wano? Like, what's happening? Yeah.
Although this then raises another problem. You know how I've been saying for a minute, Im and the communication squad knew that the Revs were at Kamabaka Queendom based on when Lucia got destroyed?
Mm-hmm.
Do we see... So you know how a Gorosei member and an admiral is heading to Egghead? Could we see the same start to pull up for Kamabaka Queendom? If not that giant weapon itself.
Would be interesting.
Because the revolutionaries have had the luxury so far of guerrilla warfare and always being the ones on the offense, never defense. It would be really trying if all of a sudden they start getting put on the defense. Especially since their faction is also designed specifically to have the best defense, because all of their members stat boost each other. You know what I mean? Like, you got Ivankov who can make anyone stronger. You got Bello Betty who can stack anyone's ability to get stronger. Like, they're just all fucking stack on each other. So they could hold off a raid pretty well, but it would be really interesting to see if they have a raid come through, because you know how we were talking before about how Fujitori's got his bandages on. We still haven't seen where Fujitora is at the moment in the world. I mean, hell, he may even no longer be part of the world government based on between Dressrosa and helping the Revs get away at the Revelry. Because if I was part of the world government right now, I'd be like, we're going to go silence Fuji. Wouldn't you?
Fuji?
Yeah. Because he's actively gone against you 2-3 times now. In public forums.
The problem is that, like, you can't prove that he was letting out... He was doing it to let out...
Yeah,
slaves,
but someone like CP0 don't need proof.
Yeah, I guess, but I mean, how's CP0 going to silence Fuji, man? Have you seen Lucci getting trashed?
Yeah, but I mean, like, you know, get 3 Luccis together and try and get them to stealth run Fuji. They could, you know, you could write it however you want. You know what I mean?
I need somebody on Meteor watch for that.
They just need...
fighting Fuji is like, yeah, your job is just to knock the meteors out of the sky, so we don't have to worry about it.
But, like, I mean... They, like, I mean, even in, you know, at the moment, right? Send one of the Gorosei if you need to. Or send Akainu. Make Akainu do it. Oh, you rein in your boy. But, it is pretty wild, because at the moment, right? In terms of on a number game, like, you know how I sent you that thing before? On a numbers game, right? At the moment, we've got IMU, who's in charge of the world government. Alright, so we've got IMU, who's in charge of the world government. Then we've got the 5 Gorosei, so we're at 6 top tier people. We've got the 9 Holy Knights, and I say 9 specifically because we've seen 9 individual silhouettes. There could be more, right? So all of a sudden we're at 15 pretty high tier people. You've got Governor-in-Chief Kong, and then the Fleet Admiral. So you've got 17 people that could be around that level just chilling at the moment for the world government side. Just in, like, a crazy jump of power creep. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So they could get rid of someone like Fujitora and it not hurt their war effort too significantly. It may hurt their public, like, their public standing, being like, you know, Fuji was a good guy. Oh yeah, no, it was so tragic how he got taken out by Big Mom, who magically came back for a minute and died. You know what I mean? But in terms of, like, the world government needing someone as strong as him at the moment, it's like they very well easily could have 16, 17 other people stronger than him anyway. Which is wild to think we sit in a standpoint now where an admiral in the world government may not even be top 15. That's a fucking wild time to be alive, is it not?
Yeah. Do you think if if the Gorosei get more showing, do you think we may at some point in the future have to decide to rank them all individually?
Yeah. Once we get a name for all of them, like I'm happy next time we do a scale. I'm happy to keep including them just as one name for the moment. Or if you want to do them individually, I think at this point in time you can do them individually. It won't be a problem. It's just like, I feel like if they're not named officially, it's a bit harder. But if it gets to the point where it's like...
just guessing right now.
Yeah, if it gets to the point... Well, I mean, personally, I think Gandhi's the strongest Gorosei. Right? Yeah. Solely based on the fact that he's a swordsman, he's more unique than the others.
Educated guess you can make, whereas everything else is just pure guesswork. Well, like, that guy looks more scarred. He's probably stronger.
He looks like a fighter, and I look at it from, like, if Luffy fights him, who fights the next strongest? Zoro. So the swordsman would make more sense to be the next strongest, right? Mm-hmm. Then with the rest of the Gorosei, are they going to be Straw Hat opponents, or are they going to be Admiral opponents, or Blackbeard opponents, or Dragon opponents, or Sabo? You know what I mean? All of a sudden, it's like, okay, ugh. But if you got a sword, it's like, at least I can go, Zoro is probably going to fight you. Which means you're probably the second strongest. And based on the fact that out of these guys here, he's one of the only 2 that has an awakened sash around him definitively. It's like, already I can be like, you look better. You know what I mean? But that being said, I think he's going to have a I think the Gandhi Gorosei is gonna have an awakened zone, and he's probably an awakened human fruit, and it's probably going to be more along the lines of Sun God Nika. I think he may even have one of the 4 god fruits themselves that isn't Nika.
Ooh, big claim.
Reason for that is the way I look at it is Zoro fighting him is probably going to be like what it play into 2 mindsets. What would Luffy be like with the Sun God fruit if he was a swordsman? And 2, what would Zoro versus Luffy be like? You know what I mean? They can play out both of those sort of hypotheticals if he has some god-based human fruit and Zoro has to fight him and his abilities work maybe not identical, maybe it's not imagination, but it's something just as wild. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, right, at this point in time now, Zoro's going to be a lot closer to Luffy than anyone, right? Like, by the end of the story, Zoro's probably still going to be more relative to... Zoro's going to be probably more relative to Luffy than, say, Kid or Law, right? Even if at the moment Kid and Law are getting their shine more than him.
Yeah.
So I see that as being a thing. Although, do you know what? I have to fucking ask this then. So, all 5 Gorosei now confirmed strong fighters, and then we've got the 9 Holy Knights. So like we said, we've got like 17 high tier people, right? Mm-hmm. Do you think then... Who do you think is going to be the people that fight these guys the most? Straw Hats, Revs, an assortment? Or are we going to have people like Law and Kid come back and also be involved and fight these types of people as well?
I mean, I think it's probably Revs, to be honest.
Because I would...
The problem with, like, end of series conversations like this is I always go back to well, it really depends on how the story plays out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I sitting in the problem at the moment where the world... Because how long, and you know I fucking have been doing this for a long time, how long have I been saying... Don't be surprised that the world government has a lot more top tier fighters. There's going to be an influx of like strong shit. The Gorosei are going to be strong. I didn't know about the 9 Holy Knights, but I always said don't discount the admirals and be prepared for them to be strongest because they're the final villains of the story, right? Mm-hmm. Now it's almost like, dude, you got 17 people that could be admiral level or stronger. Now it's kind of like we need more allies again. You know what I mean? Because say Luffy takes down 2 of them. A warm-up fight and then a fight against him. Right? It's like, okay, well, say the Yonko fight one of these guys each, sort of thing. So you got Luffy, Shanks, Mihawk instead of Buggy, and Blackbeard. Right? That makes a lot of sense. Then we're missing one more person to fight against them. Throw Dragon in there. Okay, the 5 top tiers are fighting the 5 other top tiers in the verse. That evens out pretty, reasonably, right? But then you got the Holy Knights, Fleet Admiral, Governor-in-Chief above them, even Sengoku at this point in time. Still above the Admirals. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's getting to the point where it's like, I still think the Admirals are going to be really strong. Don't get me wrong. I've made my bet. I'm going to line it. But it's like, I still feel like this just gives a better credence now to other characters getting a bit more power creep and coming back and having a bit more relevance against some other top tier people. But the problem is, how big is it going to be and how interesting it's going to be? Like, for example, right, I was saying right now that Vivi's coming back into the story, right? Do you think Vivi's going to have some power creep in some way, shape, or form, considering when she was traveling with the Straw Hats, she wasn't the weakest. Back in Alabasta, she wasn't the weakest Straw Hat, was she?
No, but I don't know. She wasn't the weakest because of like Usopp and scrub tier people like that.
Yes. But could she have her own power creep and stuff like that?
The problem with that is like we see Usopp get power creeped and we get heaps hyped, and then he's just trash again. Like,
Yes. Well, she's
so
never
like,
gonna be
she
a
might
top
have
tier.
power creep. Yeah, she might have power creep, but it's like a yay, she can fight New World fodder. Whereas before she wouldn't have been
Did
able to fight New World fodder.
Did you see my breakdown of the Bink Saki song in the Discord?
Yeah.
Did you read the whole thing?
I think you sent it to me through message, right?
Yeah, I did both because I also added images in the Discord. If anyone wants to check that out, go check that out in the Discord. The link is in the description down below. But I'll cover it a little bit here. But the reason why I'm bringing it up is because it's like we're at a stage now where the story's coming to an end, but it still feels like we're having to gather the crew again. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Which is fitting with the song. Because this, the song obviously goes, gather up all of the crew, and I did a breakdown of it where I was like, gather up all of the crew is indicative of the East Blue Saga. Time to ship out Binks' brew. The wind it blows to where who knows is the Alabaster Saga, and about Binks' brew being the story of the Poneglyphs. Finding out about them, it's time to go find Binks' brew. To where who knows, you know what I mean? Then the waves will be our guide. All across the ocean's tide, rays of sunshine far and wide. The birds sing their cheerful things in circles passing by, being a representation of Skypiea. Specifically, the panel about how Skypiea, like at the end of Skypiea with Luffy in the literally the rays of sun being Luffy's shadow casting across the world, right? With his celebration with the clanging of the bell. And you have the South Birds being the birds singing by. Then the next saga is Water 7. Bid farewell to Weaver's Town. Say so long to Port Renown. Sing a song, it won't be long before we're casting off. That's literally almost bar for bar what happened in the Water 7 saga, right?
Yeah.
Then, depending on the translation, this changes a little bit. I'm using the official Viz translation, though, for this section. It's still applicable in the Japanese and even in the English version for the song that changes the lyrics again to make the melody better. But I'm trying to keep it as close as to accurate as I can here. Cross the gold and silver waves, changing into water sprays, sailing out our journey to the ends of the seas. The Thriller Bark saga ends with us reaching the red line, which is the literal end of the sea. Right? Then we get the next verse. Gather up all of the crew. Time to ship out Binks' brew. Post time skip. Gathering up the crew again. Right? Pirates we will divide and conquer all the seas. With the waves to rest our heads. Ship beneath us as our bed. Hoisted high up on our mast. Our Jolly Roger flies. Being indicative of the Dressrosa saga. Conquering all the seas. Luffy going around fighting conquerors and stuff like that. Right? Then we get to the verse 4, Emperor's Saga. Somewhere in the endless sky, a storm has started coming by. Waves are dancing, having fun. It's time to sound the drums. If we let blow winds of fear, the end of us is near. Even so, tomorrow the sun will rise again. Literally, the way the waves look goofy going into Wano, Luffy dying, coming back, the sun rising again, sun god rising again. It's pretty fucking indicative, right? Mm-hmm. Then we've got the last two verses. Gather up all of the crew. Again, we haven't had the crew gather up, but we have new members of the crew and old members of the crew that aren't part of the crew anymore. For example, Vivi's been reintroduced to the story, but we also know she's an official Straw Hat, right? Yeah. So, to me, this verse would be talking about gather up all of the crew, time to ship out Binks' brew, is indicative of Vivi coming back into the fray of the story and reuniting with the Straw Hats. Right? Then the next segment. Could be today, could be tomorrow. Twilight dreaming, no longer can we now see. Shadow hands still waving free. Why worry? There's sure to be a moonlight night again. To me, that's just fucking bar for bar Blackbeard, right? Yeah. Right? Literally, it's like Twilight dreaming, right? Dude, Blackbeard can't dream. Literally can't fall asleep, right?
Mm-hmm.
No longer can we see shadow hands. Literally, Blackbeard fights with shadow hands. Why worry? There's sure to be a Moonlight Night again. I mean, the opposite of the Sun God would be bringing another night, right? Then the last verse is gather up all of the crew, which in my mind would be getting all the crew together, including the people. So if the last section was like getting Vivi back on the crew, the next part will be gathering up like Yamato and whatnot. Like every member of the Straw Hat crew all together for the first time in the story. Right? Time to gather up the crew. Time to ship out Binks's brew. Sing a song, a lively song for all the oceans wide. After all is said and done, we all end up skeletons. Endless, aimless, the story on an uproarious sea. To me, Binks Sake, up until now, bar for bar, has talked about every saga that we've gone through. Right? We've got 2 verses left, and both of those verses I feel like could be very indicative of the arcs that we've got left in the end of the story. So at the moment, the second last gather up the crew, time to ship out Binks' brew, is gathering the crew, including the likes of Vivi, on Egghead. So I feel like we've got Egghead. The next arc is going to be a Blackbeard-centric arc. Then we're going to get up the whole crew, and then the last section is going to be the Void Century. So we probably have 4 arcs left in this final saga, including the one we're on now. Right? At the moment, I think that it's also possible that, say, the stuff relating to Blackbeard could relate to Im, especially since after reading this chapter, Im's all shadow. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Do you think that has any relevance? Like that breakdown, the fact that the verses are fucking indicative of what's happened in every saga. Do you have any thoughts on that?
And like it's a very Oda thing.
And it's also very interesting that it's because I had this little theory the other day, right? After that, do you know what would be really interesting?
Huh?
If Binks is the actual birth name of Joy Boy, and it's Monkey D. Bink. Right?
Okay. Yeah.
And he was the original Joy Boy and the original family of D. Right? Because it's funny how we get people like Nefertari Vivi here being the first D. Like they're adopting it as a sign of camaraderie. Yep. Whereas it either has to mean something or it was someone's name originally anyway. And everyone just took it on as like a pseudonym. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The reason why I think that's interesting though is because if you keep going on with that song, right? It talks about like, time to ship out Binks' blues, sing a song, a lively song for all the oceans wide. After all is said and done, we'll end up skeletons. Endless, aimless, this story on the uproarious sea, right? Also parallels very much with like, the story on an uproarious sea. That's just the poneglyphs, isn't it? Laugh Tale, the story. Very indicative of that, right? But if we look at what the story has said based on what it correlates to so far and what's left in the song that hasn't been covered, right? Singing a song for all the oceans wide would be indicative of exposing the Void Century, or at least Im, to the whole world. Which it's really interesting that we're set up in a situation right now where that's possible. You know what I mean? Zed, good to see you, my dude. Imu versus Blackbeard, and in the end, it's still Blackbeard versus Luffy. Do you reckon... I don't think Blackbeard's the final villain. I think it's Im, clearly. I think... Oh, this is going to sound bad. I think it's possible that Blackbeard survives the whole story of One Piece.
I don't.
You know?
No. I think Blackbeard is going to basically represent the bad side of pirates, and like just
breed.
like the general pirates.
I could see that, but I think my two predictions for Blackbeard is he's either gonna survive the whole story or he's gonna be the only character that we see drown. The thing with him though at the moment is it's like he causes a lot of stuff, but at the same time he parallels Luffy in having a dream and ambition, right? And although he does some bad things, like, can you say that Blackbeard's done anything necessarily more selfish than Luffy?
I mean, the thing is that Luffy is inherently extremely selfish, but he's like almost like a force of nature in that him being selfish works out to still be utterly good for the world. Whereas Blackbeard's selfishness has caused way more pain than Luffy's ever
But
caused.
it's only caused pain, really, to bad people as well. Right? Like,
I mean, I don't know, were the Whitebeard pirates bad people?
I mean, pirates are pirates. I mean, okay, put it this way, right? The Whitebeard pirates would be good pirates, but they're still pirates. They still went around robbing people and just absolutely fucking people's shit up.
Yeah, but it's also entirely possible that they were just like Luffy, where they were like robbing bad people, right?
But like, but that was also like one of the big things. Is right. It's like, who defines who's good or bad in that situation? The winner. You know what I mean? Because like, look, if you look at it from the sense that it's like, okay, when Blackbeard killed Thatch, that was scummy, right? But that was scummy by our like noble standpoint, right? We also know that like the Whitebeard pirates have like a hard monopoly on a section of the ocean in the world and like constantly kill people and sell them to the world government. So it's not like, even though we see them through the lens that like Luffy does, where we're like, oh, they're good guys, they're not exactly good people either. Even Ace, you know, like, I've seen a lot of people do breakdowns in that, being like, the world government's so fucked up, they killed Ace for the sins of the father. But that's also completely ignoring the fact that like Ace, that never would have happened had Ace not gone set out and become a pirate and made a name for himself anyway. They never would have uncovered those situations, because it was the fact that he was going around burning people alive and stuff like that as well, and gaining that notoriety, that even got the spotlight on him enough to learn his history. You know what I mean? Like, even though we look at the One Piece story through the lens of like Ace is a good guy and he's nice and he's kind and he just, you know, he just wanted to be loved, we also don't look at the fact that like how many Marines did he burn alive who were just generic dudes doing their job. So it's like,
I mean, it's definitely true that like, yeah, a lot of pirates are bad.
Even the good pirates though do bad stuff, because again, going to the point, Luffy, right? We see him as an act of good, yeah. But then when he's done selfish things, like when he went to save Ace, he freed the likes of fucking Crocodile, Ivankov, and Jinbei, who, although we know most of them are pretty good people, they still have caused a lot of pain to a lot of other people that aren't necessarily bad either. Whereas Blackbeard does the same, but the opposite, in the sense where he's done stuff for selfish reasons and he's hurt people, but the people he's hurt have always been people that aren't necessarily like morally good people themselves. They've always...
The Marines, however, are like, are in a position of power and authority, and they are abusing that position of power and authority. It's a good amount of them.
I mean, I would say the majority don't, but even though the majority don't, doesn't mean that it's like, it's still happening, you know. One cop...
The thing is that, as well as that, like, you're a part of a
system.
Like, even the Marines that don't, they still get orders to go to that kingdom that's so poor that they can't pay their tax and like
take the money,
punish them.
Yeah,
and like break the legs and steal the money, right? So like, even the ones that are good and following the law are still inherently being a part of a oppressive and evil system.
Where
like it's almost like, imagine like want to get too political. Let's not.
No, you can get as political as you want for it, but like, all I'll say is, if you look at Fullerlet Island, right? Yeah, it's full of bad people, but it's also not a terrible place to live. You know what I mean? It is a pirate island. Like I'm sure you can't go against Blackbeard, and you know they do have slavery and stuff like that there. But his citizens aren't suffering for it in that regard. You know what I mean? So it's not like even though Blackbeard's selfish, he's selfish in the same vein that say like someone like Big Mom is, where it's like they're not actively out here trying to just cause pain and suffering. You know what I mean? They're evil by proxy, just like Luffy. I mean, for example, Luffy trying to save Ace, he freed Crocodile. Actively and willingly. You know what I mean? Crocodile's the definition of a piece of shit. So it's like, Luffy's hands aren't clean of blood. Or letting blood rain. Like, Luffy in that moment was no different to Jinbei letting Arlong out of Impel Down and going to the East Blue and enslaving Nami's town. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true.
So it's one of those things where it's like, I understand that we view Blackbeard as bad because he's taken good people that we care about in the story, but he's not necessarily any worse than Luffy from what we've seen.
I think he's still worse than Luffy, though. I think his intentions are inherently bad, whereas Luffy will literally like beat up a bad guy who's picking on a little kid. Blackbeard would like laugh and be like, "Oh, the pirate life, haha," and then just move on with his life.
I mean, yes and no. The reason why I question that because like we see him with like people like Bellamy, where he's like after the Straw Hats left and that, and Bellamy's crew was like gonna go on a ruckus and like, you know, lashing out just because they were mad. He just shut them down and was like, "You guys are fucking assholes. Piss off." Whereas before that, he didn't do it. He let Luffy, you know, get his licks in, get his moment off. And then it was like after the fact was said and done, he didn't need to take the glory at the moment. You know what I mean? Because he is like Luffy in that regard. And for that reason, I could see a situation playing out where when the series is said and done, he may not die. He may still be... He may get defeated at some point by someone, but I don't necessarily... I don't think all avenues of the story result in Blackbeard being dead come end of series. I could see him maybe being the Whitebeard to Roger that Luffy is to Blackbeard in that weird way. You know what I mean? Like, just the other side of the coin, essentially. Because I feel like come end of series, there's gonna, like, a lot of people are gonna go down, but I feel like there's gonna still be... I think there's still gonna be a next generation of pieces of shit. You know what I mean? I think there are some people that may get through the cracks.
I think like the fan base is so hardcore expecting that Whitebeard must go down that he basically, Blackbeard.
That he has to.
Basically, yeah, he has to go down. Like, he has to. It would take so much work. It was kind of like what we're talking about with Big Mom. Like, it's possible that Big Mom could like, wow, it turns out she's actually a good person, but like they just don't seem redeemable in my eyes.
And the thing is here with Blackbeard specifically, I'm not talking about him ever being redeemed. Like, if Luffy fights him and Luffy beats him up...
That's it. People want Luffy to beat him.
But, okay. Blackbeard's different to Kaido. Kaido would have killed everyone in Wano had Luffy not defeated him. You know what I mean? I could see Blackbeard get beaten, leave an area, and then just, you know, go set up shop somewhere else. He doesn't necessarily need to be vindictive like the other Yonko.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And because of that reason, he could escape fatality come end of series. If that makes sense. Like, I mean, another semi-good example is like Buggy, right? Buggy's not a good dude. Buggy literally was destroying towns and like killing people and terrorizing people for shits and gigs at the beginning of the story. It's just in a situation now where he's playing with like forces far bigger and far greater than him that we look at him as a joke. But I feel like a lot of people wouldn't have a problem with, say, Buggy making it to the end of the series, would you?
I mean, he can make it to the end of the series, but I don't think. Yeah, but like he's not set up as like a main antagonist, right?
Well, that's one of the problems as well, where it's like, is Blackbeard at the moment set up as a main antagonist for Luffy? Or was his antagonistic role creating Marineford against Luffy?
It's hard. You kind of go into the morality, but like to some extent people think really deeply about it, and to other extent people don't, right? Like you've got to think that like this is like the general Japanese audience of people that just read it and go, wow, that's cool.
I think he's going to get in a fight, and he's either like, put it this way. What I'm saying is, if he fights Luffy, Luffy's gonna win. Yeah, but I don't think Luffy's gonna take his life. Whereas I think someone like Im, Luffy would take Im's life. You know, because Kaido and Big Mom operate on being vindictive, whereas Blackbeard is, it's fate. Whatever happened, happened. You know what I mean?
I think Kaido has. I think Blackbeard has to.
Has to die.
I just can't see the fan base in general being sort of like happy about it. I know that like in Japan with the fan base, it's like if you do something to like district, like they will cancel you. They will be like, I can't believe you did this. I'm not reading One Piece anymore.
The reason why I say it is because I think there will be a handful of figures that make it to the next generation, so that like, because like we were saying before, I mean, do you think this series ends with the whole world being kumbaya? Everyone's happy and there's no bad people in the world?
No, not at all.
And so, to me, in that regard, it's almost better the devil you know. So, if someone like Blackbeard makes it to the end of the story, like past the end of the story, he's a force of evil, but a force of evil that's not just actively destroying everything everywhere all at once. Whereas, like,
I think it has to be set up for like a new story, right? Like a new golden age of pirates, but a different one. Whereas I think like if Blackbeard's still around, he'll be too much of a domineering force.
I feel like if that's the case, then what would happen is the concept of like Yonkos abolishes completely, and instead of having like a few strong pirates ruling big territories, you have pirates take over individual countries, and they have their own country as a base, and it's like each island is ruled by its own pirate or own monarch. And
I mean, I kind of even just see it as like I kind of just see it as like pirates are just like what they are in our world. We're like generally don't even own islands. They just kind of like they all just sail around and just adventure and like steal shit and cause trouble and
well,
it's like just yeah, I don't know.
and
Because from that situation, literally anything can happen, right? Like from that situation, they can write a whole nother. They can write two piece, and it can be after 20 years, these pirates became the new semi Yonko, but now there's 8 of them, and you know you can make anything up from that point.
See,
if it's open.
But that's the thing, right? Where I think it's left open in a closed off way, where it's like better the devil you know, if that makes sense, right? So it's like. And it's funny because my two options are the polar opposite of each other. It's either Blackbeard drowns, or he gets away scot free. You know what I mean? And the reason why I sort of think like that is because it's like his personality is enough like Luffy's, where he could be in charge of the bad people of the world, and they're still bad people, but they're not necessarily as bad as they could be under the control of someone else. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's like, if they can't eradicate evil, then it's better to have a good evil person in charge of the evil people than just a paint. Like it's better to have a Blackbeard than it is to have a Dofi. You know what I mean? It's better to have a Blackbeard than it is to have a Kaido that poisons all the innocent people in all of his territory and enslaves them. You know what I mean? But I still find it hard because I was like, Blackbeard does do terrorizing. Like in Drum Kingdom, he destroyed Drum Kingdom, which is why Wapple ran away. And then you've got the likes of Hajinosu, where he's got slaves. So it's not that he is not capable of doing these bad things, right? It's just him doing it almost gets him, like, he does it in a way that would be more similar to Luffy, where he gets more of a free pass from people. And it's like, you could have it where it's like, everyone goes down, Luffy's the Pirate King, and his only rival really left on the seas, it's a proper rival's Blackbeard, end of story. And it's just like every couple of years, Luffy rolls up onto Blackbeard's territory and beats him up, and he has to like pack up shop and move somewhere else and start again.
Yeah, it just kind of seems from like a viewer perspective like a bit empty because it's like everybody loves everybody loves Law and Blackbeard just beat the crap out of Law. Everybody loved Ace and Blackbeard was the reason Ace died. Et cetera, et cetera. Like everyone kind of likes Marco and the Whitebeard crew, and he went to war and wrecked all the Whitebeard crew. Like he's just done so many things to make the viewers want him to get his just desserts that if he doesn't get his just desserts, and I know you're saying like he could still get beaten up and then but then just survive, but I feel like if he gets beaten up and then he survives and he's still in like a good position afterwards, like I think the reason why Buggy is tolerable is because he's like essentially getting tortured. Like he wants to like
he's not in a happy
if
spot.
he was if
He's
he
not
was
by now.
actually enjoying his current position, he was like actually the Yonko, then I would just be a little bit triggered, to be honest with you. I would not be happy about that.
That's
But
fair.
like the fact that he's in this situation, to be honest, I feel bad for the man. And I actually kind of feel I'm starting to be like, man, Mihawk is like just mean. Like,
Oh, dude, Mihawk is mean.
Yeah.
I tell you what, that just reminded me of other stuff happening around the same time that I've got to bring up again. Perona's on Hajinosu. So what's gonna happen with fucking Moria? Because that's got to come to fruition soon.
That's true.
And clearly they didn't kill him and take his fruit, since he's in prison, and they were like still deliberating what they're gonna do with him.
Such a good fruit, man.
So he's probably gonna join Cross Guild, right?
Like, if it wasn't for Morio, I would be saying I think Imu has the shadow fruit and he can control shadows. Like I would be saying that.
Well,
You know what I mean? Like, and that's the potential that I think that fruit could have. Like, if you give that fruit to a Yonko character narratively,
it's a Yonko level fruit.
Total sense.
Yeah, 100%. I think Perona frees Moria here, and Moria's like, that bastard Blackbeard killed Absalom, we've got to take him down. And Perona's like, we can't do it here, we've got to run. And he's like, no, I have to do it. And Perona's like, just shut up and listen to me. I've got a plan. We'll come back. You think I don't want revenge too? And she'll take Moria to Mihawk. And Moria will join Cross Guild. And I think Cross Guild will end up being a faction of all the former warlords. Or most of the former warlords. Yeah. And by getting Moria over there, that gives the Cross Guild a way to get to Laugh Tale too. Because what they can do from there, right, is say Blackbeard at the moment has Pudding, right? So they've got a third eye to read the poneglyph. Luffy's got Robin, right? Shanks already arguably knows the language himself, so he may not need anyone, since he was already part of the crew going there. Like, and we know that he was a big suck up to Odin, so Odin could have taught him for all we know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
Then we've got Cross Guild, the only other pirate organization at the moment on their same tier that doesn't have someone to deal with it. Moria can resurrect any corpse and get any of that information. So they could literally have the body of anyone from Ohara. Or anyone from the Roger Pirates. Or anything like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, they then have an ability, arguably, that could be used to get the information for the poneglyphs. Which makes this whole arms race for the One Piece at the moment a lot more tense.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Do you think CP0 here So you know how they were charged with looking after Vivi? And Vivi obviously escapes.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think they're going to come to not to Wanda, to Egghead? On the tail end of Vivi? Like, do you think they're after Morgan right now?
Could be. I really don't know what's gonna happen with Vivi, to be honest with you.
Because she was captured because Im wanted her.
Yeah.
So that, like, wanting Vivi, so like Cobra, Sabo, Wapple, and Vivi are the three biggest targets at the moment of Im, and therefore the world government.
Yep.
Therefore, they should have the heaviest influence from world government operatives, which would be Cypherpole.
Yeah.
So you'd think, since two of them are together, they'd be getting hunted down, while the other, the revolutionaries, could be delegated to the likes of the Marines and just been told, like, hey, we're just going to go nuke Kamabaka Queendom. You know what I mean? Like, that should be, like, if you were Im right now, with the information that Im knows, right, which is the location of Kamabaka Queendom and that the Revs are there, that Sabo knows, say they don't know that Wapple knows, but they know Vivi escaped with Wapple and Cypherpole failed to get them, what would your move be right now? Because I'd be wiping out Kamabaka Queendom and then sending an emissary to assassinate or capture Vivi, right? Yeah. And we already saw that Cypherpole had previously infiltrated Morgan's organization, right? Yeah, so they should have tabs on him in some capacity. Ugh. And the fact that all of this was a week ago. Or no, more than a week ago now, wasn't it? This was like a fortnight or a month ago.
Yeah. Because it was like pre-Wano.
Yeah. Do you know what? So that makes a lot of sense then. So the assassination attempt, the death was Cobra. The assassination attempt was on Saint Charlos, and the abolishment of the warlords were the three biggest stories that came out of the Reverie, right?
Right.
After that, we had Akayinu talking about how the Holy Knights are handling Charlos and Millsgard, and that Charlos survived. So Charlos isn't dead, right?
Mm-hmm.
We know that the aftermath of that is because of this event here, Sabo's being called the Flame Emperor, and that the world government should be wanting to hunt him down and kill him, but they also intercepted his location and the fact that he was on Lelucia Kingdom and then traveling to Kamabaka Kingdom. So surely, based on those logical events there, the next thing that should be happening right now is trying to get rid of Kamabaka Queendom. Or is it going to be sort of like... Do you know what would be a really crazy twist?
Yeah.
If one of the Revs actually works for the world government. And you know the original story for Starkiller? Where it was, go get the Emperor's enemies, get them together, make a revolutionary, so all the enemies are in one place and then we'll wipe them out.
Yeah.
That could be a fucking crazy twist if one of the Revs is a snitch. Although I don't see that being a thing at the moment, honestly. That's just me wanting something. Fuck, this was a good chapter.
Finally got to see him do shit.
Ooh, potentially.
It's massive news, man.
Yeah.
Remember the chapter that we first even saw him introduced? We were like hype as hell, and all we got was a silhouette of him.
Do you know what the funniest thing about that is?
Shape-shifting.
That was 160 chapters ago. Im's been in the story for almost a quarter of the story now.
Oh. It'd be stingy on those details, though.
That be true. That do be true. I love the way they draw Im's eyes in this chapter. Like, getting the monster, the monstrous forms and stuff like that, I really like. Do you think Im defaults to transforming into a dragon? Because where does the whole celestial dragon thing come from? You know what I mean?
I don't even know if... And that might not have been a dragon. Like, I feel like everything that he transforms into would be like a sort of like a... Not a specific thing, you know? Just a vague shape. Like, it does look dragon-like. It's like not a perfect looking dragon. And then like when he turns into that other form, the big form, it's not, you know, it's humanoid, but it's not like a perfect human.
I mean, it is shape-shifting in that regard, I guess, yeah. Man, Sabo better watch out, man. He's got a target on his back right now. And considering how these dudes were putting the work on Sabo, I'd be shitting myself if I was him right now.
Oh yeah.
No wonder he's spilling the tea to Dragon like he is. How do you
like, by the way, the Gorosei, I'm pretty sure are all but confirmed to not be as strong as the Knights. Holy Knights. Because I mean, Dragon specifically was like, well, our big problem now is the Knights. That's what we're gonna have to deal with. It wasn't like, oh, the Gorosei and the Knights.
I think it is the Gorosei over the Knights, personally. And my reason for it is, I think the reason why Dragon was worried about the Knights is because the Knights are like the police force for them. You know what I mean? Like, right now, I think, in the world government's standpoint, these are the 6 strongest people on the world government side. Maybe with the exception of IMU being in there somewhere.
Because it is a possibility, but
because based on the betrayal here that Sabo's saying, right, like the way he words it is like, after all, there was no way I could have known that hell was located here at the top of the world. That's the same like language that was used to describe Kaido and Big Mom at the beginning of the Onigashima raid.
Right.
They use that hell description for when it's like a Yonko. You know what I mean? And obviously you got Im here that could be representing that. But here it's sort of like Luffy being a pirate, his hell is the strongest pirates, right? Sabo being a revolutionary going up against the world government, his hell is the strongest people in the world government. And it's like, oh, they're all just here in this throne room. Like, this is corruption manifest. And they're all ridiculously strong. Because I think Dragon is afraid of the Holy Knights, and I think the Holy Knights are really, really strong. But I think the reason why he doesn't name drop the Gorosei in that same vein is because he's more worried about having to deal with the Knights first, because they're going to be more trouble, because the Gorosei don't do shit.
I could see it, but then I would also see, like, if Luffy fights Saturn and beats Saturn, that's like, okay, the Holy Knights are just like, what, they're the CP0 agents? You know what I mean? Like Luffy's stronger than Lucci, but Lucci isn't, like, this easy for him.
Yeah, ooh.
Like,
isn't he?
In that case, then the Knights are just like, what, somewhere between Saturn and Lucci? Which isn't like a massive jump. I mean, it is a jump.
I mean,
let's say the Gorosei, like, extreme case, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's say the Gorosei are each stronger than a Yonko, and then the Knights are each equal to a Yonko.
Mm-hmm.
That's like, I could kind of see that.
Yeah.
But like, I think if the Knights were any less than a Yonko, well, now they're like approaching Lucci level.
Yep.
And if they're, and then like and then that way, like, so is Saturn as strong as Kaido? Like, could Saturn could he have just gone to Wano and just taken out Kaido?
I think the thing with that, and the problem with that is like, so I still view the admirals being as strong as the Yonko, right? I think it's just a far bigger amount of people in that tier. The difference being, like, I still think Kaido was the strongest Yonko at the moment. Like you know what I mean? Like, out of the Yonkos. Just because he had the best showcasing and he showcased everything. But also, like, they had personality traits that made them weaker and situations that made them weaker. Like, Big Mom got taken out without using advanced Haki against Kid and Law when we know she had it. Right? So I think the difference is going to be, like, the Holy Knights, I think, are all going to be strong. They may not be stronger than a Yonko per se, but they're close enough to a Yonko that anyone of Marco's level is getting folded. You know what I mean? Which
Right.
is going to be one of those things where it's like, they may not, like, the Holy Knights may never beat a Yonko, but you know what? There's fucking 9 of them, and they're close enough that, like, in a group up, they would definitely win. So it's going to be one of those things where it's like, unless you're the leader of your organization, from Dragon's standpoint, it's like, unless me or Sabo come across them, you guys are fucked in a fight. You know what I mean?
But then is it like Luffy versus 2 of them, like mid diff, high diff? Zoro versus 1 of them mid diff, Sanji versus 1 of them high diff. You know what I mean? Like,
what, like at the end of the series to beat them?
No, well, yeah, or just whenever we fight them.
I would say,
like
right
say now, like, if they're less than a Yonko,
yep,
then Zoro should be able to beat them. It wouldn't be easy, obviously, but he should be able to beat them. If Zoro can beat them, Sanji would probably be able to beat 1. Just it'd be a little bit harder, right? If Zoro and Sanji can beat 1, fucking Luffy could beat 2 if he gets a power up. And Luffy's in prime position right now to get a power up because he's got Gear 5, but he doesn't really know how it works properly, right?
Well, I think a Holy Knight,
by default, fighting someone is going to get stronger than.
I think a Holy Knight isn't going to be an issue for Luffy. That's what I mean.
Like, he could fight 2 of them.
Yeah, I don't think the Holy Knights are here though for a conflict for Luffy. I think the Gorosei, Akainu, and the Admirals are a problem for Luffy. Right? Based on their abilities. I think the Holy Knights are close enough that Luffy's going to be fighting them no different to how he's, like, fighting Lucci now. You know what I mean? Where he's like, oh, I'll go into my strongest form, but I don't necessarily have to whip out all my advanced Haki to beat him. Right? Whereas when it's someone else, it's like, dude, you're not Luffy. You know what I mean? Like, even after Sanji's power up, he's so fucking many leagues behind Luffy.
I agree with that, for sure.
So it's like,
that's why I mean, like Sanji could win maybe like high or extreme diff, whereas Luffy could fight 2 of them, which is a massive difference. Like,
yeah,
massive
yeah.
difference.
The thing is though, I would view it as like, yeah, no, fuck it. I'll save 2 of them. Yeah, I was gonna say it's probably one of those things where it's like Luffy could fight 1 and not get steamrolled by them, but he's still got to fight semi-hard. But 2 of them, he'd probably lose 2. Right? But, I mean, if it doesn't matter in that situation. Because I think the Holy Knights are more going to be a warm-up fight for Sabo before Sabo moves on to someone stronger. And then maybe fights for, the likes of Zoro, Sanji, Kid, and Law sort of people. You know what I mean?
So what's the situation that you see the Straw Hats encountering the Holy Knights?
I don't think they fight all of them. I think if they fight and clash, they only come across some of them.
Do you think the Holy Knights are going to split up and take different
organizations? I think it's going to be a very chaotic battle royale, and I don't think there's going to be a situation where all of One Force's troops are in one spot. Right?
For example, would you say that you think Straw Hats are going to fight Gorosei, the Holy Knights, and some Admirals throughout the rest of the series?
Oh, yes, but not all of them.
Yeah, not every single one, but like one of each of those groups.
Yes.
At least.
Yeah.
Okay. And then would you say the Revs are going to fight at least one of the Admirals and the Holy Knights? And would you say anyone else?
The problem is with the Admirals, so it's like we're about to fight Kizaru and Garcia now, right? So that's one of those two groups done. The only one that the Straw Hats need to fight now is a Holy Knight and Im, and they've ticked all those boxes technically, right?
Well, then I guess I would just drill down into more specifics and say, let's say they do fight Saturn and then they beat Saturn or whatever,
Yep.
whatever happens with Saturn. Do you think they will then fight any other Gorosei at any point?
I think Zoro fights Gandhi, and that's it.
Okay. Because the thing is, I'm just trying to come up with like possible story-wise scenarios where all these engagements can occur, right? Like,
well, I think
okay, Zoro fights Gandhi. That means a situation has to happen where Zoro and Gandhi meet, but none of the other Straw Hats meet any of the other Gorosei. And then, and just like,
okay,
et cetera, et cetera. So, like, for example, like,
do you think the
Sabo
fighting makes its way to
a
Marine?
whole
Sorry, do you think the fighting makes its way to Merijawa? The Straw Hats go to Merijawa.
fighting. I don't think immediately.
But
right now.
at some point, do you think they're going there?
Yeah, like end of series.
Right.
Yeah.
So say end of series they go there. I see Zoro doesn't fight Gandhi until Luffy's fighting him.
Okay.
Right. And so
that would require Gandhi to survive until then.
Yeah.
Do you think Gandhi would be the only surviving Gorosei at that point?
No.
Do you think Luffy will go there with backup and some will say that, for example,
I
the
think
Reds will fight the other Gorosei?
Yeah. I think there'll be other factions, and I think it'll be more of a battle royale. For example, I think a few people may clash against them, and there'd be no definitive winner, and then someone tag out with someone else, and that be a serious fight. Then onward. Right.
And what do you think Sanji's going to be doing at that point when Zoro's fighting Gandhi?
It depends. Sanji could be on some espionage shit. He could be fighting one of the Gorosei, or he may be fighting a Gorosei in a 2v1 with a revolutionary backup. You know what I mean? Or he may be fighting an Admiral, or Sanji may not fight any of the Gorosei, and he may be fighting one of the Holy Knights.
Right.
You get what I mean? Like,
do you see the final battle at Marijoas to have involvement from Admirals, Holy Knights, and Gorosei all in that same battle?
Yeah.
Okay.
But it may not be all of their forces. For example, right? So we know that there's 9 Holy Knights, 5 Gorosei, and 3 Admirals at the moment, right? Say a situation where, you know how, like, we know that normally one Admiral is always kept at Marineford to go to Merijois if needed. Right? So it may be a situation where Blackbeard does something on one side of the ocean and they send out Fujitora to go deal with him. Right? Meanwhile, the Revs have started an assault on something, and so say 3 or 4 of the Holy Knights have been sent to go handle part of the Revolutionary Army so that they can stop the siege and get their food back. Right? Then a counterattack happens with like Dragon and that attacking Merijois. Then the Straw Hats go to Merijois, try to do the same thing. They beat, like, say Luffy has already beaten Saturn at this point, right? And say they beat Saturn and Kizaru but didn't kill them, so they retreat to heal up. You know what I mean? And it's one of those things where it's like you could have people coming back for a bit, fighting other people, and then getting defeated because they're weaker and stuff like that. And it's a bit more chaotic and a bit more battle royale with multiple fights happening around the sea where different groups are getting sent different people to fight. But then I feel like a majority of it's going to encapsulate accumulating in a fight on Merijois and in turn New Marineford below it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I could see that. Like, similar to how Wano happened, right? Like, there was a little bit where, like, King attacked Sanji, you know?
Yeah.
And obviously that wasn't the actual matchup, right?
Yeah.
And there was a bit where, like, Monster Chopper was fighting Queen, you know? Like, yeah.
And I think at that point in time, like I said, it will probably be made clear that IMU's existence exists, right? So it'll probably be a race for whoever wins a war gets to sit on the empty throne. And Im's just playing defense, right?
Yeah.
So you may have the likes of like Crocodile and Cross Guild being like hey, I want that throne. That's what we need, right, guys? This is what we formed together for. Let's take it. They go there, they clash with a few people, get their ass beat. But then that's how you get the likes of, say, like, Mihawk there. You know what I mean? And then that's how we, like, get clashes and stuff like that. Like, you may have a moment where Zoro and Mihawk start fighting, and then you have a team fight with Zoro and Mihawk versus Gandhi Dude. And you may have something ridiculous where it's like instead of Mihawk ever being defeated by Zoro in that regard, do you know it'd be another way that you could spin it? Gandhi breaks Yoru. Just outright saying, like, he's stronger than Mihawk in some capacity. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even if it's through his devil fruit included. And then say Zoro ends up beating him, you could have a moment then where Mihawk's there with a broken blade being like, I guess I'm not the world's strongest swordsman anymore. Even though you still get the vindication of them fighting during the war, it doesn't necessarily have to be to death, since people do like Mihawk and stuff like that. You know what I mean? And because we've got people like Blackbeard, right? So say Blackbeard's doing stuff off screen and you see him deal with some of these forces away from this group. You've also got the ability of him stealthily coming in later on, having dealt with some of these big players. You know what I mean? Because I think what's going to end up happening is the world government's fighting too many fronts, and they're going to wear themselves a bit thin, and there's too many organizations with good groupings at the moment. So it's always going to be like, even if any of their emissaries that they send out are stronger than any one person they have, it's always going to be a bit of a team fight against their emissaries, and they're going to be just like, after a few times of sending people out, they're like, oh, fuck, we keep losing people. This isn't working. We need to fight in groups. So then they start fighting in groups, and then you start getting tag teams again of bigger groups making bigger alliances and continuing to fight. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I think one of the big things is, like, New Marineford has been shown to be a fortress, right? So it looks pretty much unpregnable. So it doesn't look like someone's ever going to be able to break in there. But do you know what very well could happen? If fighting's happening up in Marie-Joie first, people could get knocked from Marie-Joie down into New Marineford. And that become its own battleground. You know what I mean? Because we're still waiting for the destruction of Fishman Island. You know what I mean?
I think a really interesting way to actually do that, having Morgans there, is basically like the idea of like, okay, we're going to do this massive raid on the capital, and our goal basically is we're going to have these mini snails on us, and we're going to be live recording it. Our goal basically is to get all the way to the center and confirm the identity of IMU and stream that to the entire world. And if we can successfully do that, every country will rebel. And basically the whole point is it's just like a spec ops team of the strongest people, of like the Straw Hats and the Revs and et cetera, and they're all just like bum rushing towards where Imu is. And because they know, like, Imu and knows that they all have courting snails, that means that Imu does not come out until the very end when they actually get to him, which means it's not just like we're fighting everyone and Imu at the same time.
Yeah.
So it can give like narrative reason for there to be like a big boss battle at the end with everyone against Imu kind of thing. Or even if it is just Luffy against Imu, it's like everyone else is already engaged. They've been fighting for a while. Luffy finally gets to the end, and then Imu comes out and he's devastatingly strong. And then the other thing is that, like, it'll be really interesting if it's basically like they have to bum rush New Marineford, break through New Marineford, go up the mountain, and then go through Marijoas. And so there's like multiple levels of getting towards Imu. And on each level, you have different parties that are helping them break through. So you can have like the Straw Hat Grand Fleet comes in with Luffy, and they attack like New Marineford so that Luffy can break through. And that, you know,
the best thing about that is, so you know how they keep using the word "it's like hell," and how I was saying they use that terminology in Onigashima against Kaido Big Mom. What makes that even better is because the only other time it's really used in the story is Impel Down, right? And if you think about Impel Down, Magellan's whole thing was to just like poison the area and do massive area of effect damage and fight, right? Which seems to almost be what like IMU's going to be able to do, just like with shapeshifting. Yep. But what makes that even better is because you can double up on it and make it twice as bad, because you got IMU coming from the heavens and Akainu coming from New Marineford up. So all the allies going there to try to do this are getting pincered by the two biggest heavy hitters in each faction. Which would make for some beautiful set pieces. So like I said, like you know how Luffy punched Doflamingo off the top of the thing and he went like flying across the country? I imagine stuff like that happening where people get like knocked down into New Marineford and stuff like that. And that's how you can have these beautiful set changes and stuff like that. If the fighting goes from all the way up at Marijua to Marineford to Fishman Island. You know what I mean? Because they're all stacked on top of each other. Yeah. So, especially since like we're getting these more grandiose abilities now, it'd be really beautiful and really interesting to like having all this struggle, but these set pieces change because the fighting is it's layering through these different locations that are all on top of each other that they're fighting through against each other. And that gives a lot of room as well for like different abilities to take place, or not just different abilities to take place, but like different abilities to take place and like crazy different things to happen. You know what I mean? Like I was saying before about how Fishman Island was going to be destroyed, right? Do you know it'd be insanely crazy? If Im does have a devil fruit, what if Luffy uses like a Bajrangan to punch him through all the way down to Fishman Island and Luffy chases him down there, only for them to be fighting in a giant bubble, and it's like the only way I'm going to be able to defeat you is to pop the bubble.
Alright.
And it's like we're both going to drown, sayonara. But by that point as well, you've got all the fishmen who are going to be fans of Luffy. You know what I mean? So it's like this, you know, the Umibozo, Imu being the sea demon, being drowned, ripped from his perch and drowned. You know what I mean?
True.
There's a lot of like really interesting things that they can do with that. And like that being said as well, the victory doesn't necessarily come once the fighting stops, because is it going to be one of those things where all the weaker people go down before the big bad? Or is it going to be one of those things where, what if the big bad and the main character go out before the rest of the fighting stops? And it's one of those things where it's like the big bad's defeated, oh, but we're still in hell. You know what I mean? Where it's like, because you don't see it very often in stories where the main fight goes down before the like other fights, but that could add a lot more tension to it. You know what I mean? Where it's like, if Luffy gets completely written off and Im gets defeated, you're then in a situation where you're like, Sanji, I really need you to beat this God Knight. It's no longer just like, oh, you know, do your best. If not, Luffy can go round him out later. You know what I mean? It takes the victory away from the top tier, even though they did the most important job in the most important role. It takes the weight of this battle off their shoulders almost, and it distributes it to all the individual people that were built up throughout the whole story up until then. You know what I mean? And they could do that in multi-layered way. But like, for example, right? Say Luffy gets taken out defeating Im, right? And then you got all these other fights dragging on, defeating everyone else. Then what happens once all these people are defeated and the factions are left to point fingers at each other and go, well, I want to be the ruler now. You know what I mean? You could have a moment where it's like, all of a sudden, Blackbeard's here, and he's just like, well, if the throne's there, I'm going to take it. Crocodile's like, fuck you, I'll take it. You know what I mean? And you got all these people start infighting over it, and then it takes Luffy getting back up after his fight just to go sit on the throne.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Ooh, I tell you what, You know how Oda's talked many a time about what the end... Like, he has always known what the final panel of the story is going to be?
Yeah.
What if it's Luffy sitting on the throne?
Gear 5 form cackling.
Like on that cover page from last week.
Mm-hmm.
That would be pretty intense, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it'd be cool.
We still need to find out what the giant straw hat is. There's so many fucking secrets still happening. And, like, I love this chapter, but at the same point in time, still silhouetting people is such a dick move, Oda. We're in the final fucking saga, man. Just give it to us, please. I don't need more hype coming. I've got the hype. Just let me enjoy this shit.
Yeah, dude, you can't show us 6 characters all fighting against someone and just silhouette all of them.
Do you know what the worst part is? We're not going to get... I think we're going to get to see Saturn's reveal very soon, and we're not going to see any of these other dudes until all, and I mean all, of the Holy Knights are revealed.
Yeah.
And it's going to be such a troll.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it's going to be like 2-3 years without finding out what these guys' abilities are, where we get introduced to all these other factions and shit like that, see all of these other silhouettes and abilities finally come through, and then we're finally going to loop back to this shit, and it's going to be like, it's going to be good stuff, but it's also going to be a little bit mediocre, like it always is. You know what I mean? All right, that being said, we've almost gone for 4 hours. Is there anything you want to say before we wrap up? Oh,
all good.
I didn't even realize. Is there a break next week? There's no break. Yes. Ugh. Do you have any predictions for next chapter?
No idea.
I think next chapter. Dumb question, really quickly. We talked about Sai and Leo proclaiming they were part of the Straw Hats, but we don't find out what happened to them. Did they escape or were they captured? Or are they in the process of escaping?
Who will find out? Maybe they're going to have something to do with Vivi getting away.
Because that could result in some of the Grand Fleet coming back into the story. Because Luffy would never call the Grand Fleet, would he? But what if Sai calls the Grand Fleet for Luffy? So what if they're with Vivi and Wapple at the moment? They make it to Egghead Island, see the massive assault happening, and then on Luffy's behalf, because Luffy's just going to be trying to do it himself, what if they call the Grand Fleet?
Imagine if that massive fleet of ships the Marines sent, sailing all the way through, got utterly wiped out by the Straw Hat Grand Fleet.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be such a sick clout. Like, it's probably the largest fleet that the world government / Navy has ever assembled in the past, recent history.
And it's just going to be obliterated.
Yeah.
With 2 of their best members, Kizaru and Saturn, on it.
And who do you think's gonna have a higher bounty, Sabo or Luffy?
Honestly, Sabo just at the minute, only because of the whole Im thing. Although then again, they may be repressing Sabo's bounty.
Luffy takes out a Gorosei?
I think Im's more worried about him being revealed than a Gorosei getting taken out.
Damn though. Because, I mean, like, realistically, like, they may as well assume that Sabo has already told Evis.
Alright. I'm making the bold proclamation now that Dragon's got a 6,660,000,000 bounty.
Makes sense.
And Sabo's Flame Emperor bounty is going to be higher than at least the Emperor's at the moment, meaning it's higher than Luffy's. And considering Mihawk's bounty is higher than Luffy's as well, I think it's going to be higher than Mihawk's bounty.
Damn.
So I think he's going to be over 3.5 bill. So I think at the moment, Sabo, if he doesn't have a higher bounty than Shanks, he's going to be top 3 bounties. The question is Sabo or Blackbeard at the moment, who's going to have a higher bounty? Because I think Sabo's probably going to have a higher bounty than Blackbeard. Based on him and the Reverie. Right? So Blackbeard's bounty is 3.9 bill at the moment. So Sabo may have a higher bounty than Shanks at the minute. Even with no feats. Because no offense to him at the moment, like, all he's done is see a dude and get his ass kicked. Poor dude.
Yeah, but he's a pretty massive symbol.
Yeah, 100%. Alright, I'm going to wrap the stream up there because I've got to go to the toilet. You got anything you want to say before we go?
I'm all good.
Alright, thank you guys and girls for coming through. Nothing but love, nothing but respect until the next chapter. Just remember, Fujitora got his ass handed to him by Greenbull apparently. Fake news. Sabo and a few good men, fake news. Alright, peace. Have a good one. Say goodbye, Daniel.
Goodbye, Daniel.
Peace. Have a damn good one. Goodbye.